Chapter 17:22. He had promised to end the battle with a single strike. However, the result was beyond everyone's expectations. The man who had shouted to end the battle with a single strike was knocked down by Bufang's wok. The people around the fighting pit had never thought that a black wok could be used in a battle. A magic treasure. A wok. A chef's magic treasure. What a rebellious chef. Didn't you see the 10-game winning streak? This guy won the competition by cooking delicious food and smelling stuff with a black wok. This black wok can be used to cook and smash people. It's a must-have magic treasure for home and travel. I think I can get one too. Maybe I can make it to the qualifying round. The crowd murmured among themselves. Bufang held the black turtle constellation wok in one hand and put it away. Bufang had expected to end the battle with a single strike of the wok. The black wok was already very heavy, and with the addition of a wisp of chaotic energy, the power of the wok just now was almost comparable to a blow from a chaotic saint. Hezhong's strength was not bad, but he was about the same as Tong Tian, maybe a little stronger. However, Bufang had grown a lot. That wok had made Hezhong despair. It was because that wok really didn't speak reason. No matter what kind of move you used, it would break everything with force, smashing into your face and head. Hezhong was taken away. His clothes were torn, and his mind was shattered. He no longer had the ability to continue fighting. Just like that, the expert of District B, who ranked 10th, was taken away from the fighting pit. The nobles who had placed their bets on Hezhong were annoyed. They had lost their bet on Bufang once again. When would this guy, who repeatedly broke the rules, taste the taste of failure? The void became blurry. The person in charge of the fighting pit descended once again. She stood in front of Bufang and gave Bufang a strange look. This old woman should have mastered energy similar to the law of space. She came and went without a trace, similar to Heaven God's space. The wok contains chaotic energy. It's comparable to a blow from a chaotic saint. Young man, you have a lot of tricks up your sleeve, the old woman said indifferently. However, she didn't say anything. In the qualification battle, if you can win, it was your strength. It had nothing to do with cheating. The Black Turtle Constellation wok was Bufang's magical weapon, so why couldn't it contain a wisp of chaotic energy? It could only be said that this magic treasure was slightly powerful. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. With a flick of his wrist, he took out an oyster pancake and nodded at the old lady. I've consumed a lot of energy. I'll eat an oyster pancake to replenish my energy, Bufang said. Everyone, the consumption is a little high. I didn't see you expend any energy at all, okay? Just holding the wok and smashing it down would at most consume a bit of magic power and god power. Compared to Hezhong, using the sword formation and sword slaves would consume a lot of energy. The old woman glanced at the oyster pancake in Bufang's hand, and a look of dread flashed across her face. Young man, let me give you a word of advice. Don't court death. You will be punished by the Queen of Curses for eating delicacies in Void City, the old woman said meaningfully. She frowned and took a few steps back in disgust, as if she wanted to keep a distance from Bufang. If tasting delicacies is courting death, then I'd rather press forward on the path of courting death. As soon as Bufang finished speaking, he stuffed the entire oyster pancake into his mouth. The old woman snorted coldly. Get ready for the second match. Since you're so confident, I'll make your opponent in the second match not so easy. As soon as she finished speaking, the old woman's figure disappeared. The next moment, Bufang turned his head and looked at the entrance of a room under the fighting pit. There, the entrance door slowly opened. Then a tall and sturdy silhouette slowly walked out from within. He had a burly body and a ferocious face. His upper body was that of a vicious beast, but his lower body was that of a burly human. As he walked, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. His aura was extremely fearsome, and what wrapped around him was not the power of curses, but a unique evil power. Oh, Bufang paused. He stared at the man seriously. The man's arm was very strange. It was covered with ferocious scales and emanated a sinful aura. What a familiar arm! Isn't this the arm of Heaven God Transmigration, who escaped from the chaotic universe? Why did it appear here and attach itself to this man's arm? Ezra. Ezra the evil wild beast. Ezra, tear him to pieces. Crush him completely. Stop this guy. The moment the burly man appeared in the fighting pit, the whole place burst into an uproar. Everyone was screaming, feverish, and excited. It was as if they had seen their idol. Ezra, I love you so much. What kind of name is this? The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. With a thought, he turned to look at the ranking. Ezra. It wasn't hard to find him on the leaderboard. He looked down the rankings. He looked down and saw Ezra's name in the 4th place. Oh, he has Heaven God Transmigration's strange soul demon arm, but he's only in 4th place? He was a berserk beast man from the beast universe. He had the pure bloodline of the beast god, and he was a born warrior and a cruel slaughterer. He had 129 battles in a row, which made him very powerful. There was no doubt that Bu Fong's opponent this time had a dazzling record. Bu Fong's 11 consecutive victories were nothing in this man's eyes. Ezra was a noble from District B. After he was banished to Void City, he gained freedom and a new life there. Now, he was the idol of countless nobles. Boom, boom. Ezra had the head of a crocodile, and his eyes were as sharp as a wild beast's. His lower body was dragging a tail, the tip of which was covered with sharp spikes. With a single sweep, it shattered the ground. The second qualifying round begins. The crones in different voice rang out over the fighting pit. Before long, the voice disappeared. The audience was in an uproar. The clamor seemed to have stimulated the rampage behemoth. Rumble. The beast grinned, revealing a mouthful of ferocious and sharp teeth, each of which was filled with cold, killing intent. I'm going to tear you apart and eat your flesh, Ezra said, his cold eyes rolling as he stared at Bu Fong. Bu Fong took a bite of the oyster pancake. Little Hu, who was sitting on Bu Fong's shoulder, also took a bite. Xiaobai touched his head, while Xiaopi blew a bubble. For a moment, the atmosphere became a little awkward. Ezra roared. Then he raised his arm. At the sight of the arm, Bu Fong's eyes lit up. I can't believe this arm was taken by a beast man. Bu Fong exhaled. The next moment, the 5 supreme laws of the universe swirled around him. The moment the aura of Bu Fong's 5 supreme laws of the universe was exposed, the berserk beast man froze. His eyes were wide open, as if he had smelled some kind of fear. You. Ezra opened his mouth. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched slightly. With the 5 supreme laws swirling behind him, he raised his hand and beckoned Ezra with his finger. The provocative gesture made the audience burst into an uproar. Just when the audience thought Ezra would tear Bu Fong to pieces, then a shocking scene happened. Ezra looked at Bu Fong as if he had seen a ghost. With a sweep of his tail, he scrambled toward the room in the back. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The ground was still shaking, but Ezra had disappeared. Since Ezra had that arm, he had obviously recognized Bu Fong's aura. The arm contained Heaven God Transmigration's soul, so he knew how difficult it was to deal with Bu Fong. Now that he needed to grow, he did not dare to take any risks and chose to retreat. Bu Fong was also stunned. However, Ezra was long gone. The battle was over before it even started. The audience, after a moment of silence, they covered their faces with their hands, their faces full of disbelief. F***CK. Is he an actor? He's outnumbered before the battle even started? Is this the Ezra I know? The strong and muscular Ezra? The audience was annoyed. Why didn't the man who ranked 4th on the list have the courage to fight at all? What's the use of you? The old woman in charge also did not expect this. Even Countess Xiaqiu, who was watching the qualifying battle in her mansion, was stunned. Clearly, she did not understand what had happened. Buzz, the old woman, appeared in the arena. Her face was a little gloomy. Looking at the innocent Bu Fong, she was a little annoyed. She had promised to teach Bu Fong a lesson, but things had developed beyond her expectation. Is that beastman's brain filled with sh**t? Even if he saw a chef, he didn't have to be so scared. Would he cook you into a dish in public? Trash. Trash. I made eye contact, so I gave up on the right person. Ezra ran away. He's very fierce, Bufong said with a shrug. You're lucky, but luck is also a part of strength. You've won the second qualifying battle. The old woman seemed to be somewhat unwilling. Bufong had won the match so easily, and she felt a little heartache. The nobles around her were already very upset. Some of them, who had bet all their wealth on the battle, felt that even the Queen of Curses could not protect them. Ezra had run away, but Bufong remembered the Beastman. When he arrived in District B, the first thing he would deal with was that Beastman. There was something strange about the Soul Demon's arm, which had led Heaven God Transmigration to poison all living beings in the universe. If the Soul Demon's arm was allowed to grow, it would definitely become a great disaster. He had to kill it before it could grow. Let's start the third round. I'm in a hurry. Bufong said, You're a little impatient. Haha, I hope you'll still be like this later. The old woman sneered. After giving Bufong a deep look, the old woman's figure disappeared again. The whole fighting pit fell silent. Creak! The door opened. In the arena, a graceful figure slowly walked out of the arena. She had a swaying waist, a voluptuous figure, and was walking barefoot. Her purple hair spread down her back, making her look like a strange spider lily that attracted people's souls. It's a woman? Bufong paused. He didn't expect that his opponent in the last round would be a woman. She was a beautiful woman, and also a charming woman. Her aura was very strong. Although she didn't have chaotic energy, she should not be far from producing it. The woman walked in a charming manner, wearing an extremely short skirt. Her long white legs were very attractive. As soon as she appeared, the whole fighting pit quieted down. Then, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This qualifying battle is really big. This woman, she was the number one on the list, the holder of the winning streak, and the only existence who had won 40 consecutive victories. Bess, the right-hand subordinate of the cursed goddess from the Soul Demon universe. There was competition among the cursed goddesses, and, as the right-hand subordinate of the cursed goddess from the Soul Demon universe, Bess was naturally very strong. She wanted to help the cursed goddess gain fame and glory. Of course, in Bufong's eyes, this woman's gait was not as enchanting as the Lord Go's cat-like gait. Bess stopped not far from Bufong, and a delicate fragrance wafted out of her body. She covered her mouth and giggled. I heard that you participated in the qualifying battle to find Her Excellency Nethery, the cursed goddess. I didn't plan to deal with you because I'm not interested in the qualifying battle, but after my superior, Her Excellency Soul, heard about your deeds, she sent me here to kill you, Nethery said. Are you ready to be killed by me? Bess said with a smile. She winked at Bufong, tilted her fair shoulders, and blinked her eyes. Bufong looked at her expressionlessly. Are you a match for you? You found me so quickly. TSK, TSK, TSK. Before you kill me, can I feed my little who a meatball? Bufong said. Oh. Bess paused slightly. The next moment, he casually threw out a meatball that contained the aura of a soul demon and sped away. Little Hu, lying on Xiao Bai's head, leaped up and put the meatball into his mouth. His fat jiggled in midair. Bess looked at the lump of meat flying past her with surprise on her beautiful face. Little Hu landed in Bufong's arms, licking his lips happily. Bufong held Little Hu in his arms. Bufong glanced at Bess. Then, he pinched Little Hu's head and aimed it at Bess. Already, Bufong said with an expressionless face. As soon as he finished speaking, Little Hu's mouth fell open and his eyes widened. Chapter 17:23. Yu's opponent? Bufong did not expect that Yu's opponent would notice him so soon. According to what the noblewoman had told him, you did not come back to Void City to play, but to inherit the Queen of Curses' Void City. You are no longer the miserable netherworld woman who was exiled in the relic. You are a fair, rich, and beautiful woman who is backed by the Queen of Curses, and your status is extraordinary. Of course, you must win the Queen's favor and inherit the throne. When Bufong came to Void City, his thoughts changed slightly. He had thought that Void City might be a rundown place, and that you might not be comfortable here. But now it seemed that perhaps Void City is the place where you should stay. What I can do is probably to help you clear some obstacles. Use opponents. Just nice, I'll kill them all. Bufong's mind became very calm. Rumble. Bess never thought that Bufong would take the initiative to attack. What came out of the little who's mouth were meatballs. They contained the aura of a soul demon. As a cursed goddess who had followed the soul demon universe to conquer the soul demon universe, how could she not know the aura of a soul demon? This is the aura of a great soul overlord. Bess's heart skipped a beat. Her soft body suddenly flickered like a spring. The meatballs that shot out at the speed of light were all dodged by her by a hair's breadth. Bess was really strong. As the only person who kept the winning streak record, she lived up to her reputation. In fact, her strength was almost half a step into the realm of chaotic saints. Boom! Boom! The moment the battle broke out, the whole arena boiled with excitement. Finally, he could see a decent battle. Many people were looking forward to it. For the people of District C, this was an opportunity, but for the people of District B, it was a battle of honor. If Bufong lost, that would be great. They would be defending the honor of District B. However, if Bufong won, it would be a big blow to District B. Bess was a top expert among the candidates for the title of nobility. If even she could not stop this damn chef, then no one in District B would be able to stop him. An explosion erupted instantly. The power of Little Who's soul demon meatballs was extraordinary. After all, it was made from the flesh of a great soul overlord. Great soul overlords were the top existences in the soul demon universe. He was a peak existence even among chaotic saints. The chef in front of him had turned the meat of a great soul overlord into an ingredient. Bess knew very well how terrifying a great soul overlord was. In comparison, there were 7 great soul overlords in the soul demon universe, and each of them could make one's heart tremble. He was no weaker than the Dukes of Void City. Boom! The explosion turned the entire place into ruins. The little huli stopped spewing. Green smoke was coming out of its mouth, and its small eyes were squinting. It seemed to be quite satisfied. Xiaobai was standing behind Bufong. Xiaopi was lying on Xiaobai's head, blowing bubbles. Bufong rubbed Little Who's head. The ground under his feet was full of potholes. Bufong hovered in midair, watching indifferently, shrouded in black smoke. A charming figure walked out with enchanting steps. You have a bad temper. I like it. Unfortunately, you are on Her Excellency Soul's opponent's side. Bess's long legs were very enchanting, and her breasts were so big that they almost squeezed out of her bouncy clothes. She looked at Bufong with her beautiful eyes, parted her red lips, and stuck out her tongue to lick them. The next moment, the power of the curse wrapped around her body. Buzz, in a flash, Bess disappeared from where she was. She reappeared in front of Bufong in a flash. So, I have to kill you. Boom! Bufong tilted his head slightly. Bess smashed a hole in the void, causing it to sink and collapse. Bess smiled charmingly and kicked out with her long legs. The law of space moved. Bufong's figure left a shadow, and in the next moment, he appeared in the distance. Bufong threw Little Hu to Xiaobai. Xiaobai's mechanical eyes flashed as if he was ready to make a move. However, this time, Bufong stopped him. This time, I'll do it, Bufong said. Bufong's voice was calm, but it made many people hold their breaths. He's finally going to make a move. Have you seen this chef make a move since the competition started? It's all that puppet's doing. Ha! Even when he won 10 matches in a row, I couldn't see through this chef's strength. Many people in the spectator stands around the ring-shaped arena narrowed their eyes, and some people even let out low cries of suppression. Many people had always been curious about how strong Bufong was. However, curiosity was just curiosity. After 10 matches, he had only forced Bufong to make a move once. This time, Bess made her move. The number 1 on the ranking list, the record holder of 40 consecutive victories, could finally force the chef to make a move. Xiaobai's eyes flashed. Then, the restless flag behind him quieted down. He held Little Hu and Xiaopi in his arms and stayed in the distance. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back, his vermilion robe flapping noisily. In the distance, Bess narrowed her foxy eyes and stared at him. You still have a second choice. A choice to not die. Bess chuckled. Bufong turned his head and looked at her. The foxy smile on Bess's face grew wider. She stuck out her tongue, which made many people burn with desire. You can come with me. Follow Her Excellency's soul. That way we can... Hee. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. He looked Bess up and down. You're too ugly, Bufong said. His words were very straightforward. Bufong's attitude was also very straightforward. In an instant, he rejected her. Bess's face froze. He actually called her ugly. There were countless people who had fallen at her feet, yet this paralyzed chef in front of her dared to reject her. Then go to hell, she said. Bess said. Buzz, the next moment, she shook her arm. Immediately, 2 pitch-black daggers fell into her hands. They were 2 daggers shrouded in soul, demon energy. They dissipated like black smoke. Bess reappeared, and the daggers were about to slit Bufong's throat like ghosts. Her vermilion robe shook. The cry of the vermilion bird soared into the sky. Behind Bufong, a pair of flaming wings spread out. Bess was knocked flying backward by the impact. However, the moment she was knocked flying, her proud body wrapped around Bufong like a maggot, and her body even elongated like rubber. She shook her wrist. The 2 daggers spun in an instant. A sharp whistling sound rang out. Like 2 viper heads, they bit toward Bufong's body. Even with the protection of the vermilion robe, Bess believed that these 2 spears could poke 2 holes in Bufong's body. Suddenly, Bess's vision blurred. A golden kitchen knife blocked in front of her. With a clanging sound, the daggers were blocked. Boom! The cursed power rumbled. At the same time, divine power exploded out of the dragon bone kitchen knife. The 2 weapons collided. It was like the impact of a wave. A boom rang out. The shockwave hit the walls on both sides of the fighting pit, causing cracks to appear on them. The old woman in charge of the fighting pit hovered in midair. She reached out her withered hand and stabilized the array around her, preventing the cracks from spreading. He's so strong. Many people were shocked. It was the first time for many of them to see Bufong fight. Is this the strength of this stinky chef? I can't believe he can fight with Her Excellency Bess. Her Excellency Bess has just returned from the soul demon universe. Many nobles sucked in their breaths. With such strength, it was not an exaggeration for Bufong to win 10 consecutive victories. However, no one thought that Bufong could win, because Bess had not shown her true strength yet. Bess flew out of the fighting pit and landed in midair. The power of the curse converged and turned into a giant multicolored snake. She then stepped on the head of the giant snake. The giant snake opened its mouth as if to swallow the sky, then roared at Bufong. Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife and clad in the vermilion robe, Bufong looked back indifferently. You're stronger than I expected. Her Excellency Soul had a reason for asking me to stop you. If you enter District A, you will definitely become Her Excellency Nethery's help, which is not good news for Her Excellency Soul, Bess chuckled. Standing on the head of the cursed snake, her eyes grew colder and colder. The next moment, her aura skyrocketed and began to change. The cursed snakes in the sky became densely packed. 1, 2, 3, countless cursed snakes filled the void, flicking their tongues. As it spat out its tongue, its ice-cold scales glowed with a terrifying luster. The scene made all the nobles suck in their breaths. It's coming. It's starting. Her Excellency Bess is going to show her true strength. She's a ruthless person who once slaughtered an entire small universe. Many nobles' eyes gleamed with fanaticism. How did it feel to mix the power of sin with the cursed snakes? It was like adding the soul demon universe to Void City. It made Bufong feel tremendous pressure. The 5 supreme laws of the universe in him seemed to have been suppressed. Each of these cursed snakes was not an ordinary one. They were mixed with the soul demon's power of sin, causing their power to skyrocket. Are the people of Void City still mingling with the soul demons? Bufong furrowed his brows. Bess, on the other hand, smiled coldly. Half of her face began to be covered with cold scales. At this moment, the woman's appearance gave Bu Fong the feeling that she was a great soul overlord. However, she should be a little weaker than a real great soul overlord. As long as I can kill you, Bess said. Bu Fong took a deep breath. Void City should have something to do with the Soul Demon universe, but it should not be this close. The Soul Demons of the Soul Demon universe were a group of plunderers, invaders, and evil creatures who ate people without spitting out their bones. If Void City really joined forces with the Soul Demon universe, it would be seeking its own destruction. Looking at Bess, who was emanating a violent aura, Bu Fong raised his head. This woman probably doesn't know that I have a very strong restraint on soul demons. If she really fought him with the power of curses, Bu Fong might have to use some tricks. But mixed with the power of soul demons, I'm sorry. I'm afraid you're going to call me daddy. Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat. In the heaven and earth farmland, the blood lobsters swimming in the river of life suddenly widened their eyes. The next moment, they disappeared. The rushing water disappeared. Opposite the blood lobsters was a group of pitch-black cursed snakes. He swung the dragon bone kitchen knife. Bam! Countless blood lobsters were processed. The white tiger heaven stove smashed into the void. Bu Fong raised his hand. Flames surged, and the scorching flames burned the void. Under Bess's control, the cursed snakes kept approaching, corroding and shattering the void. However, Bu Fong was not in a hurry. He used his knife technique, and ingredients flew everywhere. The best way to deal with soul demons was food. There was nothing that one dish could not deal with. If there was, he would use two. Sizzle. The black turtle constellation walk suddenly grew larger and spun in midair. Bu Fong's vermilion robe fluttered, making him look ethereal like an immortal. With the Qilin transmigration ladle in one hand, he poured golden oil into the wok. Then, he poured the ingredients into the wok. A sizzling sound rang out, and a delicious aroma rose into the sky. In the distance, Bess sneered. She roared. The scales on her body gathered. The two daggers fused with her palms and turned into the sharp blades of a praying mantis. It was incomparably huge as it slashed down, aiming for Bu Fong's head. Bu Fong's expression remained unchanged. The blood lobsters were thrown into the wok, and the flames boiled. Bu Fong hissed. Grabbing the edge of the huge black turtle constellation wok with one hand, Bu Fong flipped the mountain-like wok in his hand. The blood lobsters in the wok tumbled with cracking sounds. When the red chili entered the wok, a majestic spicy aroma swept across the entire place. The sour and refreshing feeling made all the nobles watching the battle below dumbfounded. What kind of fighting style was this? Why had they never heard of it before? Boom! In a mountain-like black turtle constellation wok, flames surged into the sky as if they were boiling. In a flash, countless cursed snakes shot down toward Bu Fong. Puff! 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 Just for a moment, the surging flames disappeared. Bu Fong's aura was also engulfed. The cursed snakes were like small, wriggling tadpoles, covering Bu Fong underneath. Bess's two mantis blades slashed down. It's over. Bess's face was ferocious as she laughed. All of a sudden, the moment she was about to slash down, a jet of golden light flashed from the pitch-black cursed snake's puff. The cursed snake that covered him instantly melted like snow. In the field, the vermilion robe fluttered, and a figure stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The black turtle constellation wok turned into a normal laugh, spinning above Bu Fong's head. Under his feet, the divine flame was burning in the white tiger heaven stove. The dragon bone knife and the Qilin transmigration ladle hovered around Bu Fong's body. In Bu Fong's hands, he was holding a plate that shone with golden light. Spicy blood lobsters. Under the illumination of the spicy blood lobsters, Bess discovered that her cursed snakes were actually being pushed away. How could it be? Swoosh! Two praying mantis blades slashed down. Clang! The black turtle constellation wok spun. A wisp of chaotic energy floated in it. The two blades struck the black turtle constellation wok. The black turtle constellation wok didn't move. Bu Fong's face was expressionless. With a flick of his finger, He flicked it gently on the blue and white porcelain plate containing the spicy blood lobsters. It was like a stream of chaotic energy flowing down. Have fun, blood lobsters. Roar. The next moment, in the distance, Bess felt her vision blur. The cooked blood lobsters seemed to come to life. With Bu Fong's body as the center, they rushed out in all directions. Waving its big pincers, it charged toward her. The cooked blood lobsters could fly. Bess. Chapter 17:24. What was that? Bess was dumbfounded. She was not a chef, and she had never studied cooking. But she still had the basic common sense. Could something that was cooked run away? Looking at the blood lobsters waving their pincers and rushing toward the cursed snake she had released, Bess was a little confused. Bam! The number of blood lobsters seemed to be inexhaustible. They rushed into the void and collided with the cursed snakes. The cursed snakes that she had released were all torn apart by the collision. The corners of Bess's mouth couldn't help but twitch. What was special was the strong smell emanating from the blood lobsters made her feel nauseous. It was as if it came from the depths of her soul, making her shiver all over. Die! Bess swung her praying mantis blades, trying to cut Bu Fong in half. The blades hit the black turtle constellation walk, but it only made the walk buzz. A moment later, it was bounced away. Bess didn't seem to care, even though she was bounced back. She followed the trajectory of the bounce back and slashed at the blood lobsters one after another, causing them to explode. Slash. Slash. The white blood lobster meat was still exuding a strong aroma. The flowing juice, the aroma that stimulated the nostrils, and the tender meat emerged from the lobster shells the moment it was cut. The golden oil and the slightly brown broth splashed in the air. The cursed snakes scattered in the void. Bess's expression changed dramatically. Her stomach churned. Her stomach churned. What was going on? Beneath her, the huge cursed snake fell to the ground, causing the ground to crack again. Even though the blood lobsters were cut into pieces, they were still wriggling in the void. But this kind of wriggling was very pleasing to the eye. Have you ever seen a rain of blood lobsters? At this moment, Bess clearly felt it. For a foodie, this might be a wonderful experience. But for Bess, who had fused with the soul demon origin, it was the most painful torture. She knelt on the ground, her body trembling. She opened her mouth and kept vomiting. He vomited to the point where his entire body was convulsing, unable to move. It was a kind of weakness after being bored. The surrounding audience was stunned. Holy sh**T. What's going on? What kind of technique is this? Prawn meat flying in the air? It smells so good. Why did Lady Bess vomit such a fragrant prawn meat? Delicacy, this is delicacy? The audience cried out in surprise, and everyone let out sounds of bewilderment. Some nobles clutched their heads, despair in their eyes. Holy shit, what a familiar scene. Could it be that they were going to lose the bet again? In the void, the old woman narrowed her eyes. Her eyes were somewhat cold, although he had to admit that the smell of the prawn meat was really fragrant. But delicacies are all sins. It is something that the Queen of Curses hates and forbids. This little chef is destined to be punished by the Queen. The old woman's eyes were cold. The nobles of District C saw this scene through the projection array. They didn't know what to say anymore. It turned out that chefs could also fight. It turned out that delicacies could also be a trump card. Looking at Bess, who was lying on the ground and vomiting, the record holder of 40 consecutive victories, who was as weak as a girl without the strength to truss a chicken, they felt a sense of wonder. Is there really something special about delicacies? The corner of Countess Xia Chio's mouth twitched. This boy. In the void, the blood lobsters disappeared. The cursed snakes all over the sky disappeared as well. Bu Fong hovered in midair, dragging a plate of blood lobsters in his hand. The glistening broth exuded a strong aroma that seemed to stir one's mind. Every blood lobster was vivid and lifelike, as if they were really alive. In fact, the blood lobsters he used to deal with best just now were not real. Just like the cursed snake, it was actually a manifestation of energy. Spreading his hands, Bu Fong grabbed a blood lobster with one hand. The broth splashed down. Just like that, he began to eat in a dignified manner. Crack! He peeled off the lobster's shell, and the broth flowed out of it. Bufong sucked in a mouthful of the broth. With a twist of his fingers, the glistening and tender lobster meat leaped out. Bufong gently bit down. The meat tore off the shell and was shoved into Bufong's mouth. This scene attracted the attention of all the people in the surroundings. Watching Bufong eat the lobster meat, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. This is too delicious. Bufong ate the blood lobster as he landed. He looked indifferently into the distance. There, Bess was lying on the ground, her eyes wide open. Her pupils were only the size of sesame seeds, and the whites of her eyes were bloodshot, which made her look somewhat ferocious. Bufong carried a blue and white porcelain plate. The spicy blood lobster gave off a strong aroma. Bufong peeled the lobster meat with one hand as he walked to Bess. He slowly squatted down. Slurp! As soon as the lobster meat entered his mouth, Bufong looked indifferently at Bess. Bess rolled her eyes and gave Bufong a look. Then, a fragrance wafted into Bess's nostrils. This smell was extremely stinky, blurg. Bess knelt on the ground, her body convulsing. She almost vomited all her internal organs. She couldn't even exert her strength. "You? What disgusting thing are you eating?" Bess was almost roaring. Bufong stuffed a blood lobster meat into his mouth and shook his head regretfully. "Why did you fuse with the soul demon's power for no reason? That thing can't be tasted, and it will even be made into a delicacy. Tell me, why did you put that kind of soul demon's power in for no reason?" Bufong said, "If you hadn't fused with that power, you would be drooling now, not vomiting acid. There is no greater joy or sorrow in life than this." It was rare for Bufong to say a few more words. The next moment, he stuffed the blood lobster meat into his mouth. Lying on the ground, Bess flew into a rage. The fragrance was simply irresistible. Even though she had sealed off her sense of taste, the smell still lingered in her heart. It made her sick and deprived her of her strength. Chefs are the soul demon's nemesis. Bess bit the corner of her mouth, her body shaking violently. "If Her Excellency Soul were here, she would definitely kill you," she said fiercely. Bufong glanced at her and shook his head. "No, she would eat blood lobsters with me, and she would give me a thumbs up while eating, saying that they were delicious." Bufong believed that no one could resist the blood lobster's charm. "Oomph." Bess snorted under her breath. There was no doubt that she had lost, but she was not willing to accept this defeat. She was not defeated by Bufong, but by this spicy blood lobster. Her cultivation base was not even comparable to a dish. This made her extremely resentful. In midair, the crone landed. By now, there was no longer any suspense about the outcome. In the spectator stands, everyone was dumbstruck. One. Just like that, this challenger from District C had won 13 times in a row, directly obtained a spot to enter District B. It seemed that the audience needed some time to digest this information. Bufong slowly stood up. He shook the plate, shoving the last blood lobster into his mouth. With a shake of his hand, everything disappeared. Suddenly, the bowl of spicy blood lobster was just a dream. Of course, if you didn't see Bufong's red mouth, Little, who was lying on Bufong's shoulder, grinning. Apparently, he was also eaten by the spicy blood lobster. This time, Bufong had only made it slightly spicy. But perhaps it was because his level had increased. The slightly spicy level was enough to make Bufong's lips red. The crone indifferently looked at Bufong, swallowing her saliva. Then, her face twitched. Chefs were all heretics. However, even so, as the person in charge of the fighting pit, she still had to announce the result of this match. The qualifying match. After winning all 3 matches, Bufong was qualified to enter District B. He had officially become a noble of District B. Sigh. Originally, he wanted Bess to stop this lawless chef. Unfortunately, Bess failed to live up to his expectations. The crone sighed. Bess, lying on the ground, was unwilling. She had failed to live up to Her Excellency Soul's trust. It was a great dereliction of duty for her to fail to clear the enemies for Her Excellency Soul. Bess's pupils constricted. Her hair fell down, making her look even gloomier. Bufong, on the other hand, was very calm. He was finally able to enter District B. This void city was indeed troublesome. Around them, the audience came to their senses. All of them let out exclamations of surprise and annoyance. She was defeated. Her Excellency Bess, the record holder of 40 consecutive victories, was defeated. Unbelievable. Was this chef really so terrifying? Just when everyone was exclaiming, Bess, lying on the ground, finally got rid of the bad feeling in her heart. The smell of the blood lobster had disappeared. She could move now, but she felt a strong sense of unwillingness. Die! Bess jerked her head up, and her hair became stiff like steel needles. I want you dead. Boom! The ground exploded. Bess's aura soared in an instant, and the aura of the soul demon seemed to have turned into that of an abyssal demon god. In a flash, it was closing in on Bufong. Bess's eyes turned black. Her body was not taken away by the soul demon, but she had fused with it. In fact, she was the soul demon. Boom! With this move, heavy chaotic energy wrapped around Bess's fist. Then, she threw it toward Bufong. This was a powerful killing move. Bess had even sacrificed her own power to perform this move. It was a sure kill move. In a flash, Bufong felt as if he had been pulled into a mysterious realm. The killing move came crashing down. The crone narrowed her eyes. In fact, she was very close, and she even had a chance to block it. However, she seemed to have thought of Bufong's heretic identity. The crone sneered and took a step back. She left the opening to Bess. The sure kill move enveloped Bufong in an instant. It happened in the blink of an eye, but it was enough to cause exclamations. Before the regretful audience could come to their senses, the sure kill move had appeared. Many people felt that Bess's action was inappropriate. However, there were even more people who displayed excitement. Kill him. Yes, kill this chef. District B doesn't need chefs. Kill him, Your Excellency Bess. Some people were breathing rapidly, their eyes wide as they stared at the scene in front of them. Some experts of District C were filled with indignation. However, it was to no avail. Countess Xia Qiu watched with a cold face. From a moment Bufong stepped into the competition for the title of nobility, he was destined to have enemies everywhere. In Void City, it was difficult for him to gain a foothold as a chef. Sooner or later, the sure kill move would appear. Besides, from the moment you, the curse goddess, appeared in District C and watched Bufong's fight, he was destined to stand on the opposite side of the other curse goddesses. In fact, the chef had even attracted the Queen of Curse's attention. So, he could not escape death. No chef could escape death, Countess Xia Qiu thought. Boom! The power of the curse enveloped Bufong in an instant. The killing move enveloped Bufong and engulfed him in an instant. At this moment, the entire ring-shaped battle stage's ground caved in from the bombardment. It constantly cracked and was continuously annihilated. Chapter 1725. Dead. Is he dead? In the audience, someone straightened his body, craned his neck, and stared at the center of the fighting pit. There the entire ground had exploded and sunk deeply. It should be noted that the ground of the fighting pit was not ordinary. It was specially strengthened. Unless a chaotic saint attacked, it would be very difficult to destroy the ground. Smoke and dust billowed, obscuring everyone's sight. Some experts sent out their divine senses, trying to sense the result of the battle. However, as soon as their divine senses entered the tumbling smoke and dust, they howled miserably as if they were being pricked by needles. Many experts' faces turned red, and they vomited blood. They screamed and clutched their heads in pain. This scene caused many people's expressions to change. What the hell happened inside? Above the smoke and dust, the old woman sat cross-legged, suspended in the void, and her eyes fell indifferently. Is Bufong dead? The old woman wasn't too sure about this. The power that Bess had just unleashed was no weaker than that of a chaotic saint. If she rashly sensed it, she might also be included in the attack range. However, with the strength that Bess had just unleashed, it should not be a problem for her to kill Bufong. Even though the latter's robe had a good defense, it could not stop Bess, who had burned almost half of her power. Swoosh! It was as if a cool breeze was blowing out from the center of it. The next moment, everyone's pupils shrank. In the smoke and dust, two figures slowly walked out. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back, his face indifferent. Although his lips were red, it did not affect his enigmatic image at the moment. Behind him, Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed, like a god of death walking out of the darkness. His fan-like palm grabbed Bess's neck, lifted her up, and followed behind Bufong step by step. Little Hu lay on Xiao Bai's head, as if he was showing off. As for Xiaopi, he was spitting bubbles as usual. Hiss! Hiss! The people around all sucked in a cold breath. He's not dead. Not only did he not die, but he also subdued Bess. That level of attack was clearly a sure-death situation, so why didn't he die? What had happened in that instant? Even the old woman in the sky was slightly stunned. The chaotic saint-level power that Bess had just unleashed did not kill Bufong, but was countered. Bai Si's eyes were filled with unerasable fear, and her entire body was trembling. Perhaps only she knew what had just happened. This chef, it was hidden too deeply. Even now, her little heart was still scared. Xiao Bai was very sharp. The flag behind him was fluttering. His burly body followed behind Bufong. He grabbed Bess's neck as if he was holding a carrot. In Xiao Bai's eyes, Bess was no different from a carrot. It did not strip her. Because Xiao Bai was preparing to kill, they were only waiting for Bufong's order, and they would kill Bess. Boom! As Bufong and Xiao Bai walked out, a ring of airwaves spread out in all directions. A ring-shaped wave of air immediately spread out and rolled out in all directions with an oppressive force. In a flash, the smoke and dust disappeared. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back, his face indifferent. Bufong put his hands behind his back, his face indifferent. A loud shout rang out from the void. A loud roar came from the void. The old woman's figure suddenly descended. Bufong turned his head slightly and gave her an indifferent look. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "What did you say?" Bufong said. "The match is over. You have won and can advance to District B. As for Bess, you can let her go." The old woman said. Bess was, after all, the holder of 40 consecutive victories and Soul's capable subordinate. If she was killed by Bufong, the curse goddess might be unhappy. "Let her go?" Bufong asked indifferently. The old woman nodded. She was not worried that Bufong would disobey her. As the person in charge of this fighting pit, who would dare to disobey her? "Do you think I'll let her go just because you said so?" Bufong curled his lips. Xiao Bai's eyes were sharp, and he suddenly exerted force with his huge palm. Bess's neck was bruised and bruised. Bess's eyes were filled with fear. She really felt the feeling of death, and even the soul demon power in her could not save her. "How dare you?" The old woman froze for a moment. Then she roared angrily. "How dare Bufong disobey her? Who do you think you are? Only she can kill me, but I can't kill her? Ridiculous." Bufong took out an oyster pancake and took a bite. He did not even look at the old woman. What did it have to do with him that she was angry? An uproar broke out in an instant. The whole fighting pit was boiling. Bufong wanted to kill Bess. Although it was Bess who tried to kill him first, she was, after all, a capable subordinate of the curse goddess, and the person in charge was trying his best to protect her. Yet Bufong still insisted on killing her. This was a little too arrogant. After all, the crone was a true chaotic saint. In any city, she would be an earl or marquis. "How dare you? How dare you talk to me like that?" The old woman flew into a rage. Chaotic energy surged behind her, and a terrible sense of oppression immediately pressed down on Bufong. No matter how talented Bufong was, he had only comprehended a wisp of chaotic energy. How could he dare to be so arrogant in front of her? "Xiao Bai," Bufong said. Xiao Bai's pupils constricted, and his mechanical eyes flashed. Then he exerted force with his huge palm. Slash! The next moment, In the midst of everyone's horror, Bess's neck was broken by Xiao Bai. However, it was obvious that Bess could not kill her. Her body wriggled, tried to heal. How could Bess, who could be reborn from a single drop of blood, be killed so easily? However, Xiao Bai had his own means of killing. Buzz, the flag behind Xiao Bai, suddenly soared into the sky. It fell with a loud crash. Bam! 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 It only took a moment. Bai Si's graceful body was smashed into minced meat by the flag, completely pulverized. Her divine sense soared into the sky, glaring viciously at Bufang. How dare you destroy my body? Her Excellency's soul will not spare you. Bizi cursed viciously. However, Bufang was indifferent to her curse. Xiao Bai patted his belly. Immediately, his belly opened, and a deep black hole was spinning inside. A strong suction force was released from the spinning black hole. Bess's divine sense was frightened. The belly, which looked like a black hole, terrified her. If she was sucked into it, she would probably die. Evil creature, how dare you? The old woman was enraged, roaring. A dragon-headed walking stick emerged, aiming at Xiao Bai. She wanted to stop Xiao Bai from killing Bess. The old woman didn't expect that Bufang would dare to kill Bess even though she had stopped him. The walking stick came. Primal chaos, chi, lingered on that dragon-headed walking stick. Its ice-cold aura caused everyone present to be alarmed. Xiao Bai, continue. Bufang's faint voice rang out. Then, in front of the walking stick, Bufang appeared. His vermilion robe flapped noisily in the wind. Bufang raised his hand. His yin and yang Taodai arms grabbed the walking stick. Boom! As soon as Bufang's foot landed on the ground, he retreated several steps. With each step, the ground cracked. However, he blocked it. The old woman's eyes shrank. Everyone in the arena held their breaths. This, oh my God, how dare he fight against the person in charge of the fighting pit? I'm afraid this chef is crazy. Bess's Excellency is going to die? Many people were shocked. Since the beginning of the competition, Bufang had never killed anyone. His 10 consecutive victories were all by stripping people's clothes. Even in the qualifying battle, he didn't kill anyone. But at this moment, Bufang was as cold as a god of slaughter. When a chef was serious, he was quite terrifying. You dare to block me? Young man, you've got guts. The old woman said, her eyes narrowing. Bufang twitched his mouth. Since he had blocked it, why would he still talk nonsense? Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. The next moment, the suction suddenly exploded. Bess's divine sense was terrified. She didn't want to die. She was an ambitious person. She wanted to become a chaotic saint and stand at the top of the universe. How could she die like this? If her divine sense was sucked in, Bess knew that she would be devoured until nothing was left. If her divine sense could be preserved, she would be able to reform her body, and it wouldn't take long for her to return to her peak. So, she didn't want to die. She struggled crazily into the distance. However, she couldn't escape. Bit by bit, she was sucked into Xiao Bai's stomach. Half of her body was in the black hole. Bess clutched Xiao Bai's stomach in horror. However, she was still being devoured bit by bit. The scene made everyone's scalps go numb. It turned out that the clothes-stripping demon was so terrifying. Many of Bufang's opponents, those who had been stripped by Xiao Bai, were already drenched in cold sweat. The old woman held her walking stick, trying to push Bufang away to save Bess. However, she was shocked to find that the chef's aura had changed. His jet-black hair slowly turned white. A cold, ethereal, and arrogant aura emerged from the chef's body. Bufang's eyes sharpened. The corners of his mouth curved slightly. Holding the walking stick, he raised his chin. Old man, you're crazy, aren't you? Even crazier than me. Howling? Bufang said faintly. The arrogance and disdain in his tone stunned the old woman. Rumble. She sensed that Bufang's aura was soaring. Slowly, he reached the level of a chaotic saint. A loud bang rang out. White-haired Bufang punched the old woman's walking stick and knocked it flying away. The old woman let out a long roar. Her chaotic Saint cultivation base was on full display. White-haired Bufong bent his body and exploded. Like a cannonball, he shot up into the sky and fought the old woman. At this moment, the whole stadium began to shake as if the end of the world had come. At this moment, Bufong was lawless. Possessing the proud white tiger, he shocked the whole city with one battle. Bess howled miserably. She only had 1/3 of her divine sense left. She struggled and screamed wildly. "Your Excellency, soul, save me, save me. I don't want to die." Bess was filled with resentment, madness, and fear. Perhaps her cry for help had worked. There was a roar. It was as if a ferocious beast was trampling through the void. Then, the gate of District B opened with a loud bang. A black chariot rolled through the void. On the black chariot, a graceful and cold figure was standing in front of him. That figure's aura fluctuated and was extremely powerful, even stronger than Countess Yachiyo's. With the appearance of this figure, the entire venue was in an uproar. Cursed goddess soul! Oh my god! The big boss had appeared. Lady Biska's backer has appeared. This chef is courting death. No one can save him now. Everyone was boiling with excitement. Boom! There was a roar. The old woman's body was sent flying and smashed into the surrounding walls of the stadium. The walls immediately collapsed and rubble rolled down. The entire city seemed to be shaking. In the void, the white-haired Bufong crossed his arms in front of his chest, raised his chin, and stood proudly in the void. "Stop. Bess is my woman. Don't kill her," the woman on the chariot said coldly. The woman was shrouded in a terrifying soul demon aura. He seemed to be even more depressed than a great soul overlord. Underneath, Whitey's movements suddenly paused. In the void, white-haired Bufong raised his chin and looked coldly at the woman on the war chariot. "Woman, you're crazy. You're even crazier than me," howling. "Come on, let's fight. Let's see who's more arrogant. In my eyes, all of you are trash." Everyone, the woman on the chariot, was indifferent. Her expression didn't change at all, as if she didn't care about Bufong at all. Buzz, the white hair scattered. It turned into black hair. "I'm sorry, what did you say? Can you repeat again? I was distracted just now, so I didn't hear you clearly." The black-haired Bufong rubbed his face and said calmly, "Everyone, was this chef a psychopath? I said release him." The woman on the war chariot said lightly. Bufong arched an eyebrow and nodded. Then he turned to look at Xiaobai, reached out a finger, and gently drew it across his neck. "Xiaobai, kill him." Chapter 1726. Domineering. So F** King domineering. Everyone present was stunned. How could there be such a domineering and unruly chef in the world? How could he be so fearless even in the face of a cursed goddess, the future heir of Void City? Who gave him the courage? That casual movement of his, the movement of him gently cutting his throat, was carefree and unrestrained, causing the group of people to involuntarily feel a chill run down their spines. Of course, more people's blood was boiling. The cursed goddesses were divided into camps. There were 3 cursed goddesses in Void City. The selection and birth of the cursed goddesses were very strict. They were embryos formed by the Queen of Curse's blood essence and the supreme will of Void City. They were banished to various universes from an early age. It was too difficult for a cursed goddess to grow up. To put it simply, once a cursed goddess was discovered by someone from another universe, before she grew up, she would be like a human-shaped treasure that countless experts coveted. Even if she grew up, she would become the public enemy of the whole universe. This was a well-known fact. Just like Soul, the cursed goddess of the Soul Demon universe. She had grown up under the covetous eyes of countless soul demons, and she had even devoured many soul demons. Only after countless fortuitous encounters did she return to Void City. The one who brought her back was Duchess Tianlian, one of the 3 dukes of District A of Void City. With the support of a duke, Soul was like the sun at high noon in Void City. The other 2 cursed goddesses were completely suppressed by her aura. The other cursed goddess, who was said to come from the primitive universe, could barely fight Soul. As for the last cursed goddess, She came from the desolate, chaotic universe. Even with Duchess Yunlan's help, she could only tremble under the pressure of two cursed goddesses. Are you courting death? The noble and proud woman looked coldly at Bufang. Her somewhat black lips parted slightly as she spat out those cold words. As soon as those words came out, the whole venue turned cold. In the distance, the crone who was sent flying by White Tiger got to her feet again, her eyes filled with anger and shock. Xiao Bai, kill her. Suck her to death. Bufang said. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered. The suction force of the black hole in its abdomen suddenly increased. Biska, who was struggling to hold on, was terrified. Bit by bit, he was sucked in, impudent. The cursed goddess was furious. She raised her hand. A blue cursed snake crawled up and flicked its tongue on her arm. With a flick of his finger, the azure cursed snake instantly shot toward Xiao Bai. The cursed snake contained an incomparably terrifying power. Soul was very strong. In Bufang's perception, she should have reached the peak of the saint of the Great Path, almost half a step into the realm of chaotic saints. His chaotic energy had already condensed, and he was only a step away from becoming a chaotic saint. She was much stronger than Bess. He wasn't any weaker than the old woman in charge. The law of space spread. Bufang's figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was in front of Xiao Bai. The blue cursed snake flicked its forked tongue and erupted with a terrible aura. Bufang focused his eyes, reached out a hand, and grabbed the cursed snake. No matter how the snake roared, it couldn't move an inch forward. You're courting death. Who dares to touch my curse? Cursed goddess Soul twitched her mouth. Swoosh, sure enough. When Bufang grabbed the blue cursed snake, its cursed power spread through his skin and into Bufang's body, constantly corroding Bufang's arm. Down below, Xiao Bai had finished devouring the snake. Bess's figure had completely disappeared. Even her miserable cries had disappeared. A peak saint of the Great Path was killed by Xiao Bai, just like that. This made many people in the fighting pit's hair stand on end. This chef is really not afraid of death. Bufang's eyes narrowed slightly. The next moment, with a shake of his hand, an oyster pancake emerged. He stuffed it into his mouth and chewed. The power of the curse on his arm was gradually suppressed. His arm, which had turned blue, gradually returned to normal. Oh, cursed goddess Soul's pupils constricted when she saw that. You can suppress the curse power? Soul's eyes grew colder and colder. Are you a strange chef? But no matter what, you must pay with your life for killing my people. The woman said. As soon as she finished speaking, the next moment, the crone next to the cursed goddess moved. She sped through the air in a flash. It was a humiliation for her to be knocked flying by Bufang. Now that she had captured Bufang, she would treat it as a gift to Soul. Bufang furrowed his brows, narrowed his eyes, and sighed. It seems that I really have to fight my way into District B. As a chef, he really hated fighting and killing. He was tired of it, and he only longed for peace. What a pity! Buzz, the black turtle constellation walk emerged. He grabbed it with one hand, and the chaotic energy fell on it. Then he threw it out. The crone's dragon-headed walking stick collided with the walk, causing a deafening rumble. However, the crone did not retreat so easily. The cursed power turned into a huge spider web and fell toward Bufang. It wanted to completely envelop Bufang. The crone was just a new chaotic saint, so her chaotic energy was much weaker than that of Countess Xiaqiu. Bufang was not afraid. He grabbed the dragon bone kitchen knife, and the god of cooking's eye flashed. He slashed it out. Boom! It exploded in an instant. The old woman was forced to take several steps back, and the cursed net was torn to shreds. Cursed goddess Soul watched the scene coldly. In her opinion, Bufang was already a dead man. She did not care at all. The crone was the person in charge of the fighting pit in District B. She was a chaotic saint. However, her strength was relatively weak. Otherwise, she would not have been the person in charge of District B. After all, who would be willing to be the person in charge if they could get the title of Count or Marquis? After killing Bess, Xiao Bai burped. The next moment, he joined the battle. Little Hu lay on his head and kept shooting soul demon meatballs from his mouth. together with Xiao Bai and Little Hu. The crone immediately felt the pressure double. She was being suppressed by Bufang. It was rare to see a chef who could fight a chaotic saint above his level. The crone was depressed. She had been suppressed once again. Bufang even threw out a dish. A strange light swirled over the dish, which immediately enveloped the crone and sealed her energy. There was actually a formation inside the dish. A gourmet array? Rumble. The crone struggled wildly, trying to break the array, but she could not break free. Everyone in the fighting pit sucked in a cold breath. They could not believe that this domineering chef could suppress a chaotic saint-level crone. Although the latter was almost at the bottom of all chaotic saints, the crone was suppressed. The cursed goddess did not seem to care or be shocked at all. It was as if she would not flinch even if the crone was killed. Aunt Lien, do it, on the pitch-black chariot. Cursed goddess soul was already feeling a little impatient. She had come to save Bess, but not only did she fail to do so, but she was also slapped in the face. Of course, she had to get her revenge. How could she? He had to use a powerful technique to suppress this chef. Only then would he be able to do so. Alas, since Soul wants you dead, then you can die. In midair, instantly ripples spread out. In the sky, the dense primal chaos aura surged up. The next moment, a fair, slender, crystal clear, and beautiful palm emerged from the energy. The fingers of the palm were as slender as white onions. Rumble. As soon as the palm appeared, it slapped down toward Bufang. The power of the palm burst out with a terrifying aura and power. At this moment, heaven and earth exploded. The arena, which had been relatively safe, could not withstand the impact and exploded in an instant. Duchess Tianlian. The attacker was none other than Duchess Tianlian. The nobles in the fighting pit cried out in alarm as if they had gone crazy. The noblest existence in Void City was the Queen of Curses. Below the Queen of Curses were the 3 Grand Dukes. Every one of them possessed supreme power and was a peak existence among chaotic saints. They were the best among the first echelon of chaotic saints. This kind of existence had always been elusive and elusive. But today, Duchess Tianlian had made a move. Bufang immediately felt a terrible pressure. His pupils constricted. Bufang could feel that the attacker was stronger than the noblewoman who took you away. A Duke of District A? A supporter of the cursed goddess. Bufang breathed a sigh of relief. Back then, the noblewoman suppressed him and took you away. At that time, Bufang felt extremely unwilling. And now, was the same thing going to happen again? However, Bufang was no longer the Bufang of the past. Bufang seemed to be screaming in his heart. Facing the palm that smashed the entire ring-shaped fighting arena to pieces, Bufang's god of cookings, I was fixed on it. Buzz, with a shake of his hand, Bufang took out a perishing pot, a death sword pot, a soul demon meatball, a strengthened fortune flatbread, and chaotic energy. In Bufang's hand was an unstable and violent offensive tool that was emitting a fragrant aroma and glowing golden light. It was the condensation of the dish's essence. However, it could also be said to be a mixture of coarse branches and rotten leaves. Ripples of energy spread out. Even Bufang himself was shocked. However, he was looking forward to it. Boom! Facing the palm that looked like a real palm, Bufang pushed out the golden bead in his hand. I'll name this dish the Chaos Pot of Creation. Bufang said coldly. Boom! In a flash, the golden chaos pot of creation collided with the palm. An explosion broke out. At this moment, District C and District B shook violently. In a flash, the fighting pit was reduced to ruins. Hit by the blast, the nobles coughed up blood and floated in the air, their eyes filled with horror. In the explosion, the energy was extremely violent, constantly destroying everything. Little Hu lay on Xiao Bai's head, his fox fur fluttering in the wind. However, Little Hu's eyes were bright. When he thought of the golden chaos pot, he felt his appetite increase and his mouth watered. In the explosion, a soft cry of surprise rang out. The next moment, everything vanished into thin air. Bufong landed hard on the ground that had turned into ruins. In the sky, cursed goddess Soul, standing in the chariot, had a look of shock in her eyes. It's a pity that this move of yours is not perfect. Otherwise, it could really burst out with world-destroying power. A gentle voice rang out. A white veil fluttered, and a figure emerged from the void. This was a delicate woman, and her entire body exuded an impulse that made people want to take pity on her. Although she looked thin and weak, no one really thought she was weak. She was one of the 3 dukes of District A, Duchess Tianlian. She was as tender as water. The woman glanced at Bufong and sighed with a sad face. Aunt Lien, don't talk nonsense with him. Kill him. Those who offend me will be killed without mercy. Soul, on the other hand, was cold and ruthless. Compared to other women, she was more iron-blooded. Right at this moment, a faint laugh rang out in the void. A plump figure emerged, and the turquoise chariot rumbled as it crushed through the void. The noblewoman stood in front of Duchess Tianlian. Her laughter rang out like silver bells. In front of cursed goddess Soul, the golden chariot crushed through the void. Standing on top of it was a woman dressed in a pitch-black dress. He can't die with me here. Yu's face was expressionless. Her hair was messy in the wind, and her dark eyes stared straight at Soul. The 2 cursed goddesses finally collided. Chapter 1727. An uproar broke out in an instant. Even the fighting pit, which had been reduced to ruins because of the collision, was shaking under the uproar. Everyone looked up at the sky in disbelief. It was not only the nobles in the fighting pit. The nobles of District C, District B, and District A were also watching the scene in shock. They passed through the avatar array, which looked a little shabby because of the collapse. Although many of the images were blurred, the scene in the sky was so clear and shocking. They could not believe that the 2 cursed goddesses were colliding at this moment. In fact, every cursed goddess had countless supporters. They would stand in line and support the cursed goddess. Therefore, the collision of the cursed goddesses would naturally become a major event in Void City. After all, the cursed goddesses could inherit the throne of the Queen of Curses. A throne, supreme and supreme. It represented supreme power. Controlling Void City was tantamount to controlling the universe. Even the Soul Demon universe, the chaotic universe, and the primitive universe did not necessarily dare to offend Void City. As the endless land of exile, the importance of Void City was self-evident. This also made the cursed goddesses, who could almost inherit Void City, extremely noble. Cursed goddesses who had not grown up were the public enemies of the people. But when they grew up, they would become the supreme princesses of the universe. The 2 cursed goddesses of Void City, they were fighting over a man. This was simply too explosive. Countess Xia Qiu watched with great interest. The look in her eyes became much more serious. Bufong had brought her too many surprises. This chef was amazing. She was not the only one who was watching. The Count of District C, the Marquis of District B, the cursed goddess from the primitive universe of District A, and the Duke behind her were all watching. In fact, many people felt that the high and mighty Queen of Curses was also paying attention. If that was the case, quite a number of people had already sucked in a breath of cold air. Then this matter was really a little interesting. Smoke and dust billowed in the ruins. Around them, nobles hovered in midair. Among the countless universes, which universe had the most saints of the Great Path? That must be Void City. The saints of the Great Path banished from other universes eventually became the people of Void City. Moreover, as time went by, the requirements to become a saint of the Great Path in other universes would become more and more stringent. However, there was no such requirement in Void City. After the competition, Bufong could clearly feel the strength of Void City. Many of the nobles hovering in midair were saints of the Great Path, but there were also many god emperors. They were supreme existences in other universes, but in Void City, they could only get a decent reputation. Bufong stood on the ground. The vermilion robe fluttered. Using the chaos pot of creation just now had consumed a lot of Bu Fang's energy. After all, before the collision, it was Bu Fang's mental strength that maintained the balance and stability of the energy. However, the power of the explosion made Bu Fang very satisfied, although a lot of power was wasted because of the explosion. However, Bu Fang felt that this was a research direction, and he could let Neo Hansen study it. It might become Bu Fang's trump card. It was just like the perishing pot that Neo Hansen developed in the past. The noblewoman smiled warmly. She was really beautiful. Her figure was plump, and although it was not perfectly proportioned, it was huge in all the right places. Standing in front of her, Duchess Tianlian looked a little shabby. She was not afraid of no harm, but of no comparison. The scale of the two was not proportional at all. Sister Tianlian, we are protectors, not thugs. It's not right for you to act like this, the noblewoman said with a chuckle. As she smiled, her body trembled slightly. Her chest rose and fell in an instant. Duchess Tianlian glanced resentfully at Duchess Yunlan's chest and twitched her mouth. Nethery, the curse goddess, was the person Duchess Yunlan had chosen. In fact, Duchess Tianlian did not quite understand why Duchess Yunlan had chosen such a hopeless curse goddess, and even stood up to her. Shouldn't she be on good terms with her? Otherwise, when Seoul inherited the throne of Void City in the future, it would be Duchess Yunlan who would suffer. As for whether she could inherit the throne or not, Duchess Tianlian felt that there was no need to worry at all. You stared at the woman in the distance with her black eyes. Their gazes collided in midair, and there seemed to be black thunderclaps rumbling in the air. Hiss! Behind you, a ghostly green, cursed snake rushed out. It was huge and seemed to be roaring at the sky. Meanwhile, a mighty energy was surging behind Seoul as well. The blue cursed snake had a ferocious look in its eyes as it roared at the ghostly green cursed snake. In the collision of their auras, Seoul had even suppressed Nethery's cursed snake by more than a little. This was a gap in strength, and it was somewhat difficult to make up for it. You had inherited the essence of the previous curse goddess of the chaotic universe, but her strength had just broken through to the level of Saint of the Great Path, and she had not even condensed chaotic energy. Seoul, on the other hand, was a half-step chaotic saint, and had even condensed chaotic energy. You want to fight me? You've been hiding all this time, and now you dare to come out? Cursed goddess Seoul said in a domineering manner, staring coldly at Nethery. Her lips curled upward slightly. Is it because of this chef? You narrowed her eyes and did not say anything. I know. You have a close relationship with this chef, but let me tell you that this mentality of yours is not right. If you want to sit on the throne of Void City, you can't be entangled in ambiguous relationships. You need a cold and ruthless heart to be qualified for that position. The Queen of Curses doesn't need emotions. Cursed goddess Seoul said. Her every word was like a thunderclap that shook the void, causing Nethery's face to turn slightly unsightly. When she finished her last sentence, Seoul's expression turned slightly ugly. Standing on the chariot, you trembled, and blood trickled down the corner of her mouth. That kind of pressure was really too strong. However, she was not afraid, and she did not flinch. Even under Seoul's powerful pressure, she did not give up. When the noblewoman saw this, she was very appreciative, and the corners of her mouth curved into a smile. Duchess Tianlian sighed softly. Why bother? Down below, Bu Fang cracked his neck. That cursed goddess Seoul made him very unhappy. Of course, this displeasure stemmed from the pressure she exerted on you. That kind of pressure should have been aimed at him, but instead, it was Nethery who had to bear it. But the law of space bloomed like a lotus flower. Bu Fang's figure appeared in front of you in an instant. The Queen of Curses doesn't need emotions. Bu Fang looked indifferently at Seoul. Do you think you're the Queen of Curses? Cursed goddess Seoul glanced at Bu Fang. She did not take him seriously at all. Who do you think you are? Do you have the right to speak here? Aunt Lien, kill him. Her cold voice rang out. Aunt Lien, who was stopped by the noblewoman, sighed again. The next moment, she stopped abruptly on the spot, leaving numerous afterimages in her wake. Oh, little sister, wait for me. The noblewoman chuckled. Her breasts were heaving. The two afterimages turned into countless figures in midair. They were all their backs. Bam, 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 bam. Rumbling energy swept and collided. In this instant, the two of them had exchanged tens of thousands of blows. Bufang glanced at them. With the god of cooking's eye, Bufang could see everything clearly, but he did not care. Boom! Duchess Tianlian took a step back. Her eyes grew much more serious. The noblewoman was sweating profusely. Her sexy lips were parted, and she was exhaling hot air. Cursed goddess soul could not help but frown when she saw that. Are you two going to fight? Cursed goddess soul tilted her head with a faint smile. Bufang looked at her indifferently. Suddenly, you reached out a hand, grabbed Bufang's shoulder, and pulled him behind her. Let me, you said. Bufang paused. He seemed to hear the determination in Yu's words. Bufang did not say anything. He looked at Yu and let her solve everything herself. Cursed goddess soul was very confident. She seemed to have everything about Nethery in her grasp. Fight? Why would Nethery start a war with her? You're just a newly returned curse goddess. You have no influence, capital, or strength. Why should you fight me? Just Duchess Yunlan. But, as Duchess Yunlan said, they were just protectors, not thugs. They could not help you fight. Besides, one duke was not enough. She, the cursed goddess, had many marquises and earls under her control. A duke was not enough. She was sure that you would not dare to fight her and would give in. As long as you gave in front of the public today, she would make a profit this time. After that, you would no longer be a threat to her. You would also lose the qualification to compete with her for the throne of the Queen of Curses. The corners of Soul's mouth curved upward slightly. She had been living in the Soul Demon universe for years, and under the influence of the power of sin, she had become very good at controlling people's hearts. The nobles were watching. Would the newly returned cursed goddess really start a war with a veteran cursed goddess for a chef? If that was the case, they could really admire her courage. Bufang looked at you. In the distance, the noblewoman was also looking at you. Duchess Tianlian sighed again. I actually don't like Soul's overbearing demeanor, but this is the only way she can sit on that throne, Qin Wentian said. She was in a dilemma. She felt sorry for the newly returned cursed goddess. Duchess Tianlian sighed softly. You looked indifferently at Soul. She was confident, proud, and in high spirits, as if she had everything in her grasp. You also know that this choice is a suicidal one. She doesn't have the capital to fight. However, if she doesn't fight, she will lose the qualification to fight. Yu's eyes trembled slightly and seemed to be wandering. Suddenly, a delicious aroma burst into the air. Yu froze for a moment. She turned her head and saw Bufang holding a bowl of spicy blood lobsters at her side. Bufang held the blood lobster in one hand. With a shake of his hand, the lobster shell fell off, revealing the white, tender, and elastic lobster meat. The delicious aroma burrowed into Yu's nostrils and put Yu in a trance. She pursed her lips, and Yu's eyes were directly attracted by the blood lobster. Here, have a blood lobster to calm yourself down. Bufang threw the peeled blood lobster to Yu. Yu took it and stuffed it into her mouth. Don't worry. Fight. Fight them. What's the big deal about an army? You have me. Bufang stuffed a blood lobster in his mouth, rubbed Yu's head, and said expressionlessly, Chapter 1728. For a moment, the atmosphere became a little awkward. When Bufang made that remark, although it sounded cool when he said it, in the eyes of the crowd, there was no doubt that he was talking big. You're just a stinking chef. How can you compare yourself to the army? That was the army of Void City, an army of experts. In other universes, they would be strong enough to trample everything. As a chef, how could he wave a ladle in front of an army of cavalry? It was extremely funny to imagine that scene. The nobles around him all sneered. Now is not the time to be a hero. They had seen a whole new world for Bufang, who had overestimated himself. Even a marquis would not dare to say that he could compare to an army, yet Bufang dared to do so. On the other side of the projection array, Countess Yachio could not help but laugh as she looked at Bufang, who had made such a beautiful remark. This chef is interesting. The other marquises and counts only thought that Bufang had gone crazy. No one believed Bufang. Of course, they did not think that you would believe him either. The reason was simple. Cursed goddesses were not stupid. Cursed goddess Sol looked at Bufang as if she was looking at a fool. Where did this rash chef come from? Was he going to laugh her to death so that you could inherit his throne? When the noblewoman heard that, she laughed so hard that her chest heaved up and down. Bufang felt that he was right. It was just an army. Could he not compare to it? He peeled the blood lobster meat with one hand and stuffed it into his mouth. Nethery's eyes flickered as she ate the prawn meat. Well, let's fight then, you said. An elegant and serene voice resounded in the void. The next moment, the entire city had been reduced to ruins, and all the nobles hovering in the void quietened down. What? What did Nethery say? Fight? Did she really believe this chef and choose to fight? Waging war against Sol, the most powerful and influential cursed goddess among the cursed goddesses? Are you stupid? Everyone was dumbstruck, and they felt a wave of disbelief. Even cursed goddess Sol did not expect this. She thought that you wouldn't make such a stupid decision, but she never expected that she would really make such a stupid decision. Was he bewitched by that chef? Captured by a prawn? The Queen of Curses was right. It made sense to guard against fire, theft, and cooks. Are you sure? I'll give you another chance to choose. Cursed goddess Sol looked at Nethery seriously. Fight, you said energetically. The next moment, her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. Accompanied by her long dress, she looked extremely beautiful. The beauty of that moment was breathtaking. Fine, fine, fine. Since you're seeking death, I'll accompany you to the end. Cursed goddess Sol stared coldly at Nethery. The next moment, a blue cursed snake appeared in her hand. Crushing the cursed snake, an invisible curse power seemed to rush into the void, as if some kind of curse had spread out. Since you've chosen a fight, you'd better be prepared to die. This chef can't save you. I hope you won't regret it when the time comes. Sol said, this is Yu's decision. Since you've overestimated yourself, I'll wait for Yu's despair. Aunt Lien, let's go, Sol said. The next moment, she turned around, and the chariot rumbled, causing the void to tremble. She turned around, tilted her head, and looked at Bufang. If you want to rely on this chef, you'd better wait until he enters District A. If he can't even enter District A, how can he join your army? Ridiculous. Sol shook her head. The next moment, she clasped her hands behind her back, drove the chariot through the void, and sped away in a flash. Duchess Tianlian sighed. What a poor, cursed goddess. As soon as her voice rang out, her figure seemed to turn into a melancholy cloud and drifted away. Cursed goddess Sol left without hesitation. Although she did not kill Bufang, she had killed her subordinate, Bufang. However, since you have made this decision, what's wrong with me sparing Bufang's life? In any case, this chef can't enter District A alive. The throne of Void City belongs to her. The tense atmosphere dissipated. The nobles all breathed sighs of relief with lingering fear in their hearts. The departure of Cursed Goddess Sol gave them some relief. The former put too much pressure on them. Cursed Goddess Sol was indeed the most powerful cursed goddess. To be able to survive in a messy place like the Soul Demon universe, she indeed had some strength and character. On the other hand, Nethery, using the word stupid to describe her was too much. Bufang hovered in midair. He and you had finished the plate of blood lobsters, occasionally giving a piece to Little Hu. The noblewoman landed, her long eyelashes fluttering slightly as she looked at you. Have you really made this decision? It's really unwise to go to war with Sol. Even the other cursed goddess would not dare to go to war with her. The noblewoman sighed. Her beautiful eyes glanced at Bufang without any emotion. If it's because of this chef, tell me. I can help you solve it, she said. However, to her surprise, you shook her head and refused. It's okay. I believe in Bufang. You said, her lips red. We don't even know if he can make it to District A, and you're counting on him. The noblewoman shook her head. This decision was too stupid. Bufang naturally did not know that he had been called a stupid decision. However, he did not care even if he knew. Who said that a chef was no match for an army? Buffon did not believe it. Let's go. The noblewoman was about to leave with you. If you want to help you, entering District B is not a big deal. Come at District A first. We'll wait for you there. If you're late, you may become a skeleton outside Void City. The noblewoman's words lingered in Buffon's ears. The next moment, Yu's chariot also crushed through the void and left. In just a few moments, it was gone. The whole venue was dumbfounded. It was not until the two cursed goddesses left that the noise was restored. Everyone looked at Buffon with sarcasm and disdain. Most of the people present were cursed goddess soul supporters. Her foundation in Void City was simply too deep. Buffon landed. Rumble. The old crone broke free from the shackles. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were ferocious. I can enter District B now, right? Buffon said. The old crone was furious, but she did not say anything. She wanted to use her power to disqualify Buffon, but that was not allowed in Void City. A Supreme was watching them. You can. The old crone was depressed and wanted to vomit blood. She had been busy for a long time and was beaten twice, but she still could not stop the chef. The corner of Buffon's mouth twitched slightly. He beckoned to Xiao Bai. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked toward District B. The nobles kept clamoring and booing Buffon. However, Buffon turned a deaf ear to them. It was as the noblewoman had said. Now that you had chosen to fight Soul, Yu's peaceful days were numbered. He had to race against time and rush into District A. Otherwise, what awaited him might be Yu's skeleton. This was not a joke. You will die. You will die a miserable death. At the entrance to District B, the old crone, who stood in the ruins, stared at Buffon's back and said fiercely. She cursed Buffon to die a miserable death. No one could stop cursed goddess soul from ascending to the supreme throne of the Empress. A chef was even more out of the question. The Queen of Curses would never allow a cursed goddess to ascend to the throne with the help of a chef. Buffon turned a deaf ear to the old crone's words. The other nobles were also roaring and cursing him. However, Buffon did not even look back. With little White in tow, he walked step by step into District B. With his back to the crowd, he raised his hand and clenched a fist. Just as he was about to disappear into the shadows of District B, Buffon's fist bulged and he raised his middle finger. That made the nobles roar again. Buffon had successfully attracted their hatred. District B. As soon as he entered District B, what he saw was far more prosperous than District C. According to Countess Xiaoqiu, District B was not as large as District C, but the level of elites was higher. To put it bluntly, Void City was a place where strength reigned supreme. The stronger one was, the more resources one could get. If he wanted to step into District A and find you, he had to go through District B. But how was he going to do that? Buffon was a little confused about this. According to Countess Xiaoqiu, should I go through it by force? Right, there's still the soul demon arm. Buffon also felt that he needed to find it. He could not let it grow. He was walking in District B. District B was equally prosperous. However, he stood in front of the entrance. The eyes of the people around him were very strange. Some were sarcastic, some were teasing, and some were disdainful. Obviously, these people all knew about the feat Buffon had done in the fighting pit. So, could someone tell him how to enter District A? Is there a fighting pit in District A as well? Buffon pondered. Just as Buffon was pondering in his heart, the sound of something piercing through the air rang out. The clanging sound was deafening. A group of guards riding savage beasts approached Buffon at high speed. Oh! Buffon, who was in a daze, raised his head and looked at the group of guards in the sky and their mounts. The leader of the guards held a cold spear in his hand. The tip of the spear had a red tassel, and it was pointed straight at Buffon. Found him. Follow the Marquis's order to capture this chef and contribute to her excellency's soul. If he resists, kill him. In midair, the guard's eyes were cold. Behind him, the auras of the guards fluctuated, and they were all extraordinary. Among them were 3 guards who were at the level of saints of the Great Path. There was also a group of guards who were at the level of God Emperor. Their terrible auras lingered in the air. These guards were here to capture Bufong. Bufong did not expect them to come so quickly. Cursed Goddess Soul had said that it was a question whether Bufong could walk out of District B alive. Now, it seemed that she had expected it. Attack! The guard roared. In an instant, the roars of beasts rang out, shaking heaven and earth. The whole District B seemed to be boiling at this moment. All the nobles were watching with great interest. They rejoiced in his misfortune and ridiculed him. Aren't you an army? Now is the time to prove yourself. Is this Soul's army? Bufong put his hands behind his back and looked at the sky with an expressionless face. The next moment, his pupils constricted. The suffocation he had experienced since he entered Void City made Bufong's killing intense surge. Xiaobai, little who, follow me. Let's kill them together. Chapter 1729. The army, especially the army of Void City, was the cavalry of the starry sky, an existence that no universe dared to look down on. However, the chef in front of him was planning to fight an army alone. Although the army in front of him was not the army of Void City, but just a small team, it was enough to flatten some small universes. There were not many of them, and their leader was only a saint of the Great Path. However, such a team was enough to flatten some small universes. After hearing Bufong's words, Xiaobai and Little Hu seemed to have a response. Xiaobai's mechanical eyes flashed, and the flag behind him fluttered. Little Hu grinned, and there seemed to be a vast amount of energy surging in the depths of his mouth. Fight! In that case, we can only fight. According to Bufong, they could only fight their way in. They had to fight their way into District A from District B. Rumble. The four saints of the Great Path descended in an instant and surrounded Bufong. Their killing intent was released unabashedly. Bufong was sure that if given the chance, these people would kill him without hesitation, and he would not choose to be soft-hearted. One man can't defeat an army? Bufong shook his head. If an individual's strength was really strong, even an army could do nothing to him. For example, when facing the Queen of Curses, an army was useless. But was Bufong the Queen of Curses? Of course not. Besides, an army had its own wonders. Roar. Their roars shook the sky. The god emperors of the army joined forces. Their auras merged into one, and the savage beasts beneath them were roaring. In an instant, the array formed by the army in the sky became solid. The formation condensed and turned into a gigantic cursed snake. Its scales glinted coldly, and every move it made seemed to be able to shatter heaven and earth. It was definitely a terrible weapon of war. Roar. The army launched an attack. It moved in an instant. Whitey held its spear and thrust it out like a dragon, colliding with the army. Boom! The long spear stabbed into the cursed snake, causing the cursed snake to emit a deafening roar. Kill! Under the cursed snake were soldiers of Void City, the subordinates of a Marquis. He was ordered by the Marquis to take Bufong's life. So many soldiers shouted at the same time, causing the void to shatter. Xiaobai took a step back because of the impact. The four saints of the Great Path approached Bufong. With divine artifacts in their hands, they wanted to kill Bufong on the spot. How dare he fight Cursed Goddess Soul? He's overestimating himself. Little Hu lay on the enlarged Xiaopi. Xiaopi turned into a beam of golden light and flew past them. His speed was so fast that he almost shuttled through space as if he was eating or drinking. Lying on Xiaopi's back, Little Hu opened his mouth and kept spitting out soul demon meatballs. The golden soul demon meatball fell and landed on the cursed snake. An explosion rang out. The cursed snake's body tilted. Xiaobai took this opportunity to make his move. On the other hand, the battle with the cursed snake was still going well. Kill this chef. His Excellency Marquis will reward you handsomely. The leading saint of the Great Path said with bright eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, as if they had discussed it, the four of them attacked at the same time. The cursed power spread, turned into a hurricane, and surrounded Bufong in a flash. Bam! Bam! The ground of District B began to crack in an instant. It was just the beginning. but the fluctuations of the battle were already extremely terrible. In the distance, many people were watching from the sidelines. Some experts who did not belong to Curse Goddess's forces chose to wait and see. Of course, most of them were sneering at the chef for overestimating himself. He could not believe that he planned to fight against Curse Goddess's army alone. After all, Cursed Goddess Soul controlled almost the entire army of Void City. Only a very small part of the army was divided between the two remaining Curse Goddesses. In the depths of District B, there seemed to be people watching. The auras of the three experts were long and terrifying. Although they were not as strong as Dukes, they were not far from them. There is no need to guess that the people watching were three Marquises. The rulers of District B were the Marquises, and the three of them divided the whole district. The bad news for Bufong was that two of the three Marquises had chosen to stand on Curse Goddess's side. Boom! Bufong's vermilion robe kept fluttering as he stepped on the ground and kept spinning. He dodged the terrible energy that fell from the sky and shuttled through the explosions like a fluttering butterfly. Bufong glanced expressionlessly at the four saints of the great path in the sky. The four of them approached Bufong aggressively. Bam! Bufong stomped his foot, and the ground cracked and crumbled. His hair floated in the air, and as it floated, it turned white. With the improvement of Bufong's cultivation base, Bufong's fleshly body could already bear the power of the artifact spirits. The previous restriction was gone. White Tiger, kill him, Bufong said faintly. In the next moment, his head of black hair turned white. At the same time, Bufong's aura changed completely. A cold and evil smile came over the corners of white-haired Bufong's mouth. He was now the White Tiger howling, a white tiger who had completely mastered his power. White-haired Bufong spread his hand. At this moment, the pulsing crimson divine flame in his palm turned white. Boom! 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 4 attacks rained down, trying to devour Bufong and kill him in a flash. White-haired Bufong just let out a long roar. He stepped on the ground, and the ground of District B instantly cracked. Waves of air seemed to spread from the cracks. Like a beam of white light, white-haired Bufong rushed up in an instant. He faced the 4 attacks head-on. His body hovered in midair, and he did not dodge. He crashed into them in an instant. Boom! Boom! A brilliant light exploded in the sky. The dazzling light blinded everyone's eyes. The hearts of the 4 saints of the Great Path shuddered. They found that things did not seem to be that simple, because that berserk aura was too obvious. It was so obvious that even though they were enveloped by the explosion, they did not dare to underestimate it in the slightest. Suddenly, the explosion was erased in an instant. A white flame danced in white-haired Bufong's palm and crushed it. The white flame turned into a colorful white tiger in the air and pounced at the 4 saints of the Great Path. White-haired Bufong's body also approached like a spring. The sound of something piercing through the air rang out. In a flash, Bufong was in front of the 4 saints of the Great Path. In front of me, you are all trash. White-haired Bufong grinned, revealing his sharp canine teeth. Then they exchanged blows in an instant. They exchanged thousands of blows in a flash, and the collisions of their arms dazzled the onlookers. It was too dazzling and fast. Boom! With a deafening rumble, a saint of the Great Path's face twisted. His arm was broken, and he fell to the ground like a meteor. The remaining 3 saints of the Great Path were also knocked flying away by white-haired Bufong. However, this was just the beginning. White-haired Bufong moved like a ghost, like a tiger that was about to devour its prey. With a ripping sound, he pressed his palm against the saint of the Great Path and crushed his shoulder. The blood of a saint flowed in the void. White-haired Bufong let out a shrill cry like the craziest madman in a fierce battle. He punched the saint of the Great Path again and again. Slash! A saint of the Great Path was torn in half by Bufong, and his flesh, which had become a saint, stained the void with his blood. His divine soul fled with a panicked look on his face. Bufong did not stop. From a moment he asked, howling to attack. These saints of the Great Path were destined to end tragically. The white tiger was destined to be the one to kill. a ball of flame spun, turned into a flame spear, and pierced the chest of Saint of the Great Path. The divine artifact lost its luster and fell to the ground, shattering it. With a shake of the spear, a Saint of the Great Path exploded, and his divine soul fled. The remaining two also met the same fate. White Tiger was extremely violent when he attacked. The shocking scene of bodies being torn apart made countless people hold their breath. When a chef killed, he was also quite terrifying. The four saints of the Great Path were defeated. Possessed by White Tiger, Bufong had even defeated the person in charge of the fighting pit, a chaotic saint. Although the latter was a little weak, he was, after all, a chaotic saint. In the distance, even though Little Hu and Xiao Bai had joined forces, the battle was over. After being defeated, the army formed by the divine emperor lost all ability to resist. Little Hu was still fine. With a soul demon meatball, he annihilated a group of soldiers. Those who were weaker could not withstand the explosion at all. As for Xiao Bai, he was much more bloody. The flag flew back and landed on Xiao Bai's shoulder. The silver metal spear pierced through the soldiers, killing one child with each spear. Puff! Puff! Those soldiers had encountered the most terrible nightmare. The spear could not be dodged or blocked at all. The bodies of the deity emperors that were sent flying exploded. There were even some deity emperors whose divine souls were shattered. They exploded and perished on the spot. Xiao Bai, who had been a clothes-stripping maniac along the way, showed his killing side at this moment. The army was terrified. Their defeat was like a landslide. They fled into the distance like crazy. Xiao Bai walked unhurriedly with the silver spear in his hand. Under the starry sky, his mechanical eyes flashed, and his white body was bathed in blood. He was domineering and arrogant. Boom! The battle was over. The four saints of the Great Path were torn to pieces by white-haired Bufong, and their divine souls fled. The army was defeated by the puppet with a single spear. Everyone was dumbfounded and gasped. Some nobles of District B were even shivering. This lunatic, those are the subordinates of a marquis. How could he choose to kill them like this? The army was defeated. It seemed that what Bufong had said was true, that he alone was enough to defeat an army. "Let's kill our way in," said white-haired Bufong lightly, raising his chin and playing with fire. Xiao Bai, Little Hu, and Xiao Opi followed behind him as they sped toward the magnificent District A. Along the way, no one in District B dared to stop them. Even some of Cursed Goddess Soul's followers in District B roared and charged toward them. However, they were also pierced by Xiao Bai's spear, or they would be torn apart by Bufong. The nobles of District B could not resist at all. Bufong, with Whitey and the others, really killed their way from the entrance of District B to the depths of District B. Why hasn't His Excellency Marquis made a move? Are we just going to let this crazy chef kill as he pleases? He's ruining the reputation of District B. A Viscount of District B was covered in blood, and his eyes widened with rage. He had tried to rush forward just now, but he was pierced by Xiao Bai's spear. Bufong and his companions had condensed their own momentum. At this moment, no one could stop them. In his spirit sea, Bufong stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking indifferently at everything outside. White Tiger was in charge of killing, so it was best to leave everything to him. Oh! Suddenly, Bufong focused his eyes. Outside, white-haired Bufong, Xiao Bai, and Little Hu stopped, because a tremendous pressure suddenly descended and blocked their path forward. Buzz, a rumbling sound rang out. A blood-red long saber suddenly slashed down from the sky. A clang rang out. It smashed into the ground, and half of its blade sank deep into the ground. White-haired Bufong felt his vision blur. The next moment, standing on the hilt of the blood-colored knife, was a valiant woman in a blood-colored robe and hair. Behind her, one expert after another with blood knives on their backs stepped out, their numbers so great that they blotted out the sky. The surrounding nobles fell completely silent in an instant. Then, an uproar broke out. A marquis-level expert had finally made a move. Chapter 1730. How could he be so lawless? How could the Marquis of District B just sit back and watch? In many people's opinion, the Marquis should have made a move long ago. However, it was not too late. A valiant, blood-haired woman stood on the hilt of the blood-colored knife. When everyone saw this person, their hearts shook, and they were indescribably shocked. It's Marchioness Modi and the Marquis's bloodguards. I can't believe it's Marchioness Modi. This crazy chef is dead for sure. Marchioness Modi is a crazy existence who slaughtered an entire great universe with her knife. The nobles were so excited that they could not even speak coherently. They looked feverishly at the woman standing on the hilt of the knife. The latter was like a ball of fire that burned in an instant, giving hope to everyone in District B. The blood guards were Marchioness Modi's sharper knife. Wherever the knife pointed, everything would be annihilated. Each of the three marquises was extremely powerful. White-haired Bufong could clearly feel the pressure emanating from the red-haired woman. That pressure, it made Bufong shudder. In terms of fighting prowess, the woman in front of him was not weaker than Countess Xiaoqiu. In fact, her boiling killing intent was even stronger than Countess Xiaoqiu's. Bufong was not too surprised. Sooner or later, they would encounter such a problem if they wanted to break into District A from District B. It was inevitable that a Marquis would show up to stop them. Swoosh! Marchioness Modi gave Bufong an indifferent look. Then, she kicked the hilt of the knife with her foot. Immediately, the blood-colored knife roared and spun. With a rumble, a gully appeared on the ground. It should be noted that the ground of District B was extremely hard, even harder than ordinary star cores. However, it was as soft as tofu under Marchioness Modi's blood-colored knife. So, you're the crazy chef who keeps saying you want to fight Her Excellency's soul. Marchioness Modi glanced at Bufong. She grabbed the blood-colored knife with one hand. It was not a big knife. The blade was about the width of a palm, but the back was 2 fingers thick, giving off a heavy pressure. Behind her, the blood guards who were also holding long swords were equally terrifying. Compared to the motley crew, these blood guards were much stronger. No one thought that Bufong could win. Bufong could defeat the person in charge of the fighting pit. It could be said that he was already very strong. But Marchioness Modi was not someone the person in charge could compare to. Each of the 3 marchionesses was extremely powerful. Bufong could sense it clearly. There was no doubt that any one of these marquises possessed the strength of a peak modern-day heavenly god. Among chaotic saints, they should be in the middle or late stages. The primal chaos chi had accumulated to a very vigorous level. Even Bufong was not confident. But retreat. It was impossible to retreat. Since he said he would kill his way in, then he would fight. So what if he was a Marquis? White Tiger, kill. In his spirit's sea, Bufong said with his hands clasped behind his back. As soon as he finished speaking, the white-haired Bufong suddenly raised his head and let out a long howl. Marquis? He's just trash, white-haired Bufong said. The next moment, he stepped on the void and charged forward. Is this chef crazy? That's a Marquis. How can he fight against him? He's courting death. This chef is courting death. Marchioness Modi glanced coldly at Bufong. Then, she took a light step forward. Buzz, primal chaos energy swirled. In the blink of an eye, Marchioness Modi appeared in front of white-haired Bufong. The back of her knife swept out and smashed hard on white-haired Bufong's hand. She could imagine that this blow was enough to break the chef's hands. Even if she only used the back of the knife, it would be the same. Suddenly, Marchioness Modi froze, because she realized that this chef's hand was actually twisting and turning, following along her knife, suddenly grabbing her neck. It was as if he was going to break her neck. The knife shook, and an invisible force burst out, sending white-haired Bufong flying away. White-haired Bufong landed in midair. He let out a tiger's roar and charged toward the Marchioness. White flames began to spread and soon turned into a tiger's claw, slapping toward the Marchioness. You really don't know what's good for you. In that case, I'll cut off your head as a gift to Her Excellency's soul. Marchioness Modi said coldly. Then, holding the blood-colored knife, she slashed it down. At this moment, heaven and earth changed. The blood-colored knife light shrouded everything. It was as if he had isolated himself from everything else. White-haired Bufong hovered in midair, narrowing his eyes as he looked around. There was only a blood-colored domain around him. His knife energy swept out, and each wisp of it seemed to be able to shatter stars. No one can escape from my knife domain. I'll kill you with one slash. Martianist Modi said. Boom! In an instant, the knife light flashed. White-haired Bufong felt that his eyes were shrouded by countless knife lights. It was as if he was facing death head-on. White-haired Bufong raised his hand and tried his best to resist. With a clanging sound, countless knife lights scattered in all directions, destroying heaven and earth. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and there seemed to be a cut on his cheek that was oozing blood. You're just a saint of the great path. I wonder who gave you such courage. Martianist Modi sneered and shook her head. She could sense Bufong's strength, and in her opinion, he was too weak. Even if she didn't know what strange means Bufong had used to increase his strength, he was still a saint of the great path, far from being strong enough to face a chaotic saint. Boom! He easily swung his knife. The blood-colored knife domain in the sky exploded. All the nobles watched in horror. Martianist Modi carried her knife and stood in midair. Meanwhile, Bufong flew backward and smashed into the ground, creating a deep pit. Sure enough, with the Martianist's attack, the chef could no longer act recklessly. They were not on the same level. Many people breathed a sigh of relief. They were really afraid that the chef would crush his way from District B to District A. If that happened, they really didn't know what to say. The nobles of District B would lose all their faces. Now, it seemed that the chef was still not strong enough to face a Martianist. In the ruins, Bufong rolled over and got to his feet. Shaking off the sand and stones on his body, Bufong's hair turned black. He raised his head and looked at the woman. If he wanted to fight her, he might have to possess a qilin. However, Bufong felt that it might not be so troublesome. You use a knife, and so do I. Why don't we compete in knife skills? Bufong said faintly. Oh! The people around him paused. In the sky, Martianist Modi narrowed her eyes. Compete in knife skills? The next moment, she seemed to have thought of something funny, and she burst out laughing. I'm a Martianist of Void City. Why should I compete in knife skills with a chef like you? What makes you think you're qualified to compete with me? We're the Blood Guards. Kill. Tear this chef to pieces and kill all his accomplices. Martianist Modi ignored Bufong's question. She clearly had the upper hand in knife skills. Why should she compete with him? Bufong paused. He was not surprised. In the sky, the Blood Guards behind Martianist Modi bellowed. They moved out. The whole District B seemed to be trembling as blood energy filled the sky. The Blood Guards were a regular army that could trample the void and slaughter all the races in the universe. In a flash, Bufong felt a terrible pressure. The densely packed Blood Guards made Bufong suck in a breath of cold air. In that case, bring it on. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. The next moment, Bufong's eyes flashed with golden light. Rumble. His hair, on the other hand, turned purple at a speed visible to the naked eye. The aura on his body also rose continuously. In a flash, it reached a suffocating level. In the distance, Martianist Modi, who was hovering in midair, froze. The aura made her shudder. This aura. Countless people felt their hair stand on end. The strength of the aura was not weaker than that of a duke. In fact, it was even stronger. How could this chef still have a trump card? But as he opened his eyes, behind Bufong, there seemed to be a huge qilin looking down at the world. He shook his hand. The dragon-bone kitchen knife fell into his grasp. The almighty qilin was supposed to use the qilin transmigration ladle, but this time he chose to use a kitchen knife instead of a ladle. As Bufong said, they needed a massacre that would shock the whole Void City. Bufong, possessed by the qilin, glanced warily at the sky. The majestic Void City was unfathomable. He did not approve of Bufong's massacre here. After all, there was still that invincible existence in the city. However, Bufong was the host. Since he wanted to kill him, he would let him. Xiao Bai and Little Hu landed on the ground. Little Hu opened his mouth, and smoke filled the air. He was brewing a huge soul demon meatball. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed, and he became serious. However, purple-haired Bufong stopped them. With a shake of his finger, he twirled the knife. Purple-haired Bufong took a step. "You little things, back off. Watch carefully and see what a real massacre is." His voice rang out. The blood guards in the sky quickly closed in. Marchioness Modi glanced at the purple-haired Bufong. She felt a little strange, but she hesitated and did not stop the blood guards. He was a saint of the Great Path, so how could he give her the feeling of a duke? This chef must have used some kind of trick to deceive her. Kill. At the thought of this, Marchioness Modi's killing intent grew stronger. Her voice rang out. The blood guards in the sky attacked one after another. Every one of them pulled out a blood-colored knife and charged at Bufong. Purple-haired Bufong held the golden kitchen knife. Even under the pressure of the army, he was as calm as still water. Holding the saber, Xiao Chun slowly rose into the air step by step. He was facing an army of 10,000 alone. This scene dumbfounded the experts of District B, as well as the experts of District C and District A, who were watching all this. 1 against 10,000? And it was Marchioness Modi's most elite blood guards. This chef is courting death. There were nearly 10 saints of the Great Path in the blood guards, and they were not ordinary saints. They were all saints of the Great Path who could rank in the top 10 in the competition for the title of nobility. How could he fight back? Who gave him the courage to fight back? Ordinary saints of the Great Path would tremble in fear if they faced them head-on. Not to mention fighting back. Purple-haired Bufong shook his head, slowly raising the dragon bone kitchen knife. Then, looking at the sky full of blood guards, the kitchen knife in his hand was surrounded by a wisp of primal chaos energy. In an instant, he slashed out. Boom! Watch carefully. Slaughter only needs one blade. Purple-haired Bufong said lightly. At this moment, Bufong, who was possessed by the Kirin, was so domineering. But the dragon bone kitchen knife swung lightly. A wisp of purple saber radiance instantly spread out. It turned into a huge saber arc and slashed through the bodies of each blood guard. Their blood-red robes fluttered in the wind. Then all the blood guards froze in the air. Marchioness Modi's pupils constricted, and her pupils shrank. Many of the surrounding nobles were dumbfounded. They did not seem to know what was going on. What's so strange and peculiar about this light and feathery slash? It seemed like there wasn't any. Suddenly, a sharp-eyed noble sucked in a cold breath. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of a knife breaking rang out in the void. Then, at this moment, the blood guards that filled the sky exploded one after another. Their bodies were cut into halves. In an instant, the whole District B was covered in blood. Chapter 1731. Blood gushed out of the blade in an instant. A terrible wave of air rushed out of the purple-haired young man's hand and swept out in all directions. Just when all the nobles thought that nothing had happened, something horrifying suddenly happened. The blood guard were chopped into 2 halves by this slash. His body was split into 2, starting from the waist, which was cut in half. Slash! Slash! Blood gushed out of their bodies and splattered between heaven and earth. This scene was horrifying, and it made one's hair stand on end. No one thought that a chef could really fight against an army of thousands. Marchioness Modi froze in midair. That scene made her heart tremble. Her blood guards had swept across the universe and were invincible. However, they were cut in half by the purple-haired chef with 1 slash. 1 slash. It was really just 1 slash. The blood guards, who had swept across the universe, were all cut in half. Countless corpses fell from the void. These blood guards, who had been cut in half, had lost the ability to resurrect. Their bodies were wriggling, but soon, one after another, panic-stricken divine souls emerged from their bodies. Like a madman, He fled in all directions at lightning speed. The 10 saints of the Great Path were all killed by the purple-haired Bufong with one slash. It was not just the nobles present. Even Bufong, who was in his spirit's sea, was slightly stunned. Qilin is indeed a big shot. White Tiger, you still have to learn more. Gold Dragon said to White Tiger, twisting his waist. White Tiger snorted proudly and turned his head away. Among the many artifact spirits, Qilin was the strongest. After possessing Bufong, the strength he could exert was naturally extremely formidable. Of course, when Bufong's strength stepped into the level of a chaotic saint, the power he could exert would be even greater. At that time, he could also use White Tiger's possession. Of course, he could not do it now. Purple-haired Bufong had an evil smile on his face. This kind of evil charm made all the nobles feel cold all over. If the black-haired Bufong from before gave the nobles the impression that he was cold and aloof, white-haired Bufong was at Sundara. In that case, the purple-haired Bufong was evil. Being stared at by him was like facing death. Marchioness Modi's face darkened. A duke? Impossible. How did this chef manage to display such strength? In the distance, purple-haired Bufong waved his hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife spun in his hand. Little lump, hurry up and absorb. This is a sumptuous feast for you. The purple-haired Bufong said with a faint smile. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes lit up as he held the metal spear. Then, its stomach spun and turned into a pitch-black whirlpool. Buzz, the vortex spun, and a huge suction force suddenly erupted, as if it wanted to suck everything into its belly. This suction force made people feel terrified in the sky. The divine souls of the blood guards who were killed by purple-haired Bufong with one slash were trying to escape. He originally wanted to escape, but he was sucked into White E's body by White E's suction force. How dare you? Marchioness Modi flew into a rage. If their divine souls were sucked away, her army would be destroyed, and she would become the laughingstock of Void City. She could not believe that a Marquis's army was destroyed by a chef. How could she endure such humiliation? Buzz, holding the blood-colored knife in her hand, a knife light streaked across the sky and slashed wildly toward Xiao Bai. She was going to destroy this metal puppet. The nobles present sucked in their breaths. Many of them still remembered Bess's fate. Bess's desperate face was still vivid in their minds. The clothes-stripping maniac? No. This iron puppet was a Tao Tai, a monster that ate people without spitting out their bones. Marchioness Modi flew into a rage and unleashed her strength to the extreme. Chaotic energy surged and rolled over her head. If one looked closely, they would find that there were hundreds of strands of chaotic energy. This was an astonishing number. The knife, wrapped in chaotic energy, slashed toward Xiao Bai. However, it was blocked by a kitchen knife. Clang! The blood-colored knife and the golden kitchen knife collided. A clanging sound rang out, and the void shattered. How dare you use a knife in front of me? Are you courting death? Marchioness Modi's voice was cold. The blood knife in her hand spun, and in an instant, it turned into thousands of knife lights and slashed toward Bufong. It was as if they could cut Bufong into pieces in an instant. This move was extremely terrifying. However, purple-haired Bufong smiled wickedly. Then, he began to swing the dragon bone kitchen knife. Countless knife energies were chopped into pieces by him with just a kitchen knife. The knife lights were so fast that no one could see their shadows. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Rumble. In a flash, the two of them were fighting. Marchioness Modi and purple-haired Bufong fought fiercely. The kitchen knife and the blood-colored knife collided. However, every time they collided, Marchioness Modi was sent flying backward. The Duke-level pressure emanating from Bufong made Marchioness Modi's face turn extremely unsightly. She felt as if she could not block it. She kept falling into a disadvantageous position. Every move was as terrifying as a dragon. Was he really just a chef? He was just a chef, not even a chaotic saint, and yet he was giving her the pressure of a Duke-level expert. She did not believe it. Bufong displayed the majestic blood-colored knife technique, and every slash seemed to be able to shake the starry sky. However, Purple-haired Bufong was still as relaxed as ever. His casual resistance made Marchioness Modi furious. This was a humiliation. In the distance, Xiao Bai was very excited as he sucked. His mechanical eyes flashed. Xiaopi and Little Who stood in front of Xiao Bai. Some lone blood guards tried to stop Xiao Bai from absorbing the divine souls, but they were all blown away by Little Who's soul demon meatball. These two little fellows were like the most domineering men, blocking anyone from Xiao Bai's path. Countless divine souls struggled to be absorbed by Xiao Bai. The more he absorbed, the stronger Xiao Bai's aura seemed to become. The scene sent chills down the backs of countless nobles. What kind of monster did the chef bring with him? Could it be that the chef's plan to wreak havoc in District B was really going to be completed by him? Who else could stop him? The other marquises? Some nobles thought so, but they felt that this idea was a little unrealistic. 3 marquises were attacking at the same time just to deal with the chef. Rumble. Just when many people were in a daze, Marchioness Modi kept roaring. Her saber continued to slash downwards. Streaks of saber aura shot out in all directions, turning many of the buildings in District B into ruins. However, none of the terrible knife energy could get close to purple-haired Bufong. "You're really hot-tempered, woman." Purple-haired Bufong smiled evilly and shook his head. "You must die." Marchioness Modi had never been so humiliated as she was today. As the blood knife swept out. However, it was blocked by the golden kitchen knife. Purple-haired Bufong looked indifferently at Marchioness Modi. The next moment, purple light swirled in his eyes. Their eyes met. Rumble. Marchioness Modi felt her heart tremble as a huge pressure pressed down on her. Her spirit, seemed to want to resist at this moment. "I forgot to tell you that my strongest skill is not my kitchen knife, but my mental force." Purple-haired Bufong chuckled. Marchioness Modi froze. The next moment, she was completely subdued. Suddenly, a stomping sound rang out in her boundless spirit sea. A chill in glowing purple descended upon her spirit sea. Her mental force struggled to resist, but it was all torn to pieces. Splurt. Marchioness Modi coughed out a mouthful of blood. The nobles around her felt a chill. Damn it, Marchioness Modi really can't defeat him? Is this chef so strong? Since he can suppress a marchioness, does he really have the strength of a duke? Now, no one thought that Bufong's claim that he could fight against an army alone was a joke. If even a marchioness couldn't stop him, then only a duke could. What should we do? Is District B really going to be destroyed? Suddenly, just when all the nobles were shocked, dong, dong, the sound of a drum rang out. The drum was not loud, and the beat was scattered. In the next moment, the sound was like the evening drum and morning bell, and it lingered in everyone's ears, causing their eardrums to tremble. In the depths of District B, a silhouette strode over. This time, it was not a woman, but a seductive man. He held a rattle drum in his hand and gently shook it. As soon as the man appeared, the nobles broke into an uproar. It's Marquis Langu. Finally, a second marquis has stepped forward. Many people were overjoyed. If one marquis couldn't defeat him, what about 2? It had been hundreds of thousands of years since 2 marquises joined forces. Rumble. The sound of the rattle drum was like a wave crashing against the sea. Marchioness Modi coughed out a mouthful of blood. With the help of the drum, she escaped from the purple-haired Bufong's eyes. Leaning on his saber, he landed on a building and panted heavily. "There's something strange about this chef," Marchioness Modi said. Marquis Langu slowly descended from the sky, swaying his hips. His face was covered with makeup, and he looked neither fish nor fowl. "Oh, little Modi, why are you being bullied so badly? Come, let me help you." Marquis Langu covered his mouth and chuckled. At this moment, he felt that he was the most beautiful woman in the city. He glanced at the purple-haired Bufong, raised the rattle drum, and shook it gently. Thump, thump. As the drum vibrated, it seemed to connect with Bufong's heartbeat. As the drum vibrated, Bufong's heart beat rhythmically as well. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Many nobles could not stand the rhythm, and they coughed up a mouthful of blood, their faces pale. Xiao Bai's absorption of the divine souls was nearing the end. Marchioness Modi could not stop him now. She vented all her anger and killing intent on the purple-haired Bufang. What kind of trick is this? In his spirit sea, Bufang clutched his chest and furrowed his brows. This is the soul-crushing drum. It may look like a rattle drum, but it's a famous weapon in Void City. The black turtle said. He had lived the longest and he had seen the most. Then how do we stop it? Bufang frowned. He felt as if his blood was boiling and his heart was about to explode. It's easy to stop it. Qilin knows how to do it. The black turtle said. After that, he fell silent and said no more. Purple hair Bufang narrowed his eyes. The sound of the drum lingered in the air. It was useless even if he covered his ears. Looking at the enchanting Marquis Langu, who kept shaking the rattle with his thumb and middle finger, the corners of his mouth twitched into a wicked smile. Sound waves? Who doesn't know something about music these days? Buzz, purple hair Bufang raised his hand. He put away the dragon bone knife. He grabbed the Qilin transmigration ladle in his hand. Apart from the Qilin transmigration ladle, in his hand was the normal-sized black turtle constellation walk. He held the ladle in one hand and the walk in the other. Purple-haired Bufang grinned. He knocked the ladle hard on the black turtle constellation walk. Dong, dong, dong. It was a rhythmic knocking. In the distance, the face of Marquis Langu, who was shaking the rattle, froze. The rattle drum, which had been swaying with his thumb and middle finger, suddenly got stuck, and the rhythm completely collapsed. The corner of Marchioness Modi's mouth twitched. The nobles around her were speechless. Did the walk and ladle have such a function? Chapter 1732. The collision of the pot and ladle did not produce sparks. Instead, it produced a crisp sound with a hint of playfulness. No one had expected Bufang to choose such a method to fight Marquis Langu. In fact, among the three marquises, Marquis Langu was the weirdest. Of course, it was not because he was a trap. It was because of his rattle. He is a soul drummer. The rattle drum swayed, and the drumsticks tied to the body of the drum hit the surface of the drum, causing the rattle drum to emit strange sound waves. This sound wave was not only effective on the surface, but it could also shatter stars and cause the starry sky to collapse. Most importantly, this sound wave would affect one's soul and cause one's soul to fall into chaos. That was why he was known as the soul drummer. Marquis Langu's murderous methods had struck fear into many people's hearts. However, now, the experts of District B witnessed a scene that left them dumbfounded. In the face of Marquis Langu's rattle drum, the chef did not choose to retreat, but chose to fight it head-on. Just like Marquis Langu, he took out a pot and a ladle and tapped it rhythmically. It actually managed to suppress Marquis Langu's drumming. This chef is also a freaking soul gong player? Pot as gong, spoon as mallet? Soul gong player versus soul drummer? How did he fight back? What was the outcome? For a moment, everyone present was a little dumbfounded and felt that it was a little funny. Interesting. I can't believe this little chef can break my drum like this. Marquis Langu pinched his thumb and middle finger together. His eyes narrowed slightly, and there seemed to be a surge of killing intent in them. It was as if he had met his match, and his interest was piqued. Since that's the case, Big Sister will play with you. Marquis Langu stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Marchioness Modi glanced at Marquis Langu with an inexplicable disgust. However, when she looked at Bufang, she was looking forward to this unique confrontation. Pot and drum? Who would be more powerful? Bufang, who was possessed by Qilin, was smacking the wok happily. With the Qilin transmigration ladle in hand, every strike struck the center of the black turtle constellation wok, creating a rhythmic sound wave. The latter seemed to be getting more and more excited as he struck, even forming a cadence. Boom! Suddenly, Marquis Langu counterattacked. His gaze froze, and he suddenly swung the rattle drum. The drum beats grew denser and denser, and the speed at which they rang out also grew faster and faster. Dong, 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 dong. The intense drum beats regained control of the arena. Every beat seemed to fall on the hearts of the audience, causing them to inexplicably jump and feel an inexplicable sense of unease. This feeling was extremely peculiar. Many experts whose strength had not reached the level of Saint of the Great Path coughed up blood and flew backward. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and he felt as if his soul was being torn apart. Even the faces of saints of the Great Path turned pale, and they forcibly stabilized their souls so that they would not be affected by the drumming. Marquis Lang smiled, cocked his little finger, and pointed it at Buffon. "Little chef, have you seen how amazing this sister is?" Purple-haired Buffon's hair fluttered in the wind. The sound of the Chilean transmigration ladle hitting the black turtle constellation walk was muffled, causing him to raise his eyebrows slightly. The next moment, his hand trembled. He spun the Chilean transmigration ladle around his wrist and gathered his strength. Then he slammed it down. Duant! A deafening rumble rang out like a thunderclap, and the whole District B seemed to shake at this moment. A rumbling sound rang out. In District B, cracks appeared on many of the buildings. Some experts coughed up blood and flew backward, then knelt on the ground, howling miserably. Marquis Lang's expression flickered. His rattledrum was hit by the sound wave and was sent flying. A crack even appeared on the surface of the drum. "Do you want more? I can make it louder." Purple-haired Buffon smiled evilly. "Come on, my ass." Marquis Lang's face darkened. He glanced at the crack on his drum, and his heart was bleeding. He did not know how long it would take to repair this crack. In a spirit sea, the corner of Buffon's mouth twitched violently. "I didn't know it could be played like this. I seem to have discovered an incredible secret of the god of cooking Set." The black turtle's heart ached. "Do you really think the black turtle constellation walk is not a walk? What if it breaks?" The black turtle's resentment was very deep. Obviously, he had been hit like this many times before. Perhaps only a pot and a ladle could produce such intriguing sparks. Purple-haired Buffon held the ladle with one hand and the pot with the other. There was no doubt that he had crushed everything and gained an absolute advantage. Marquis Lang put away his rattledrum. His face was livid. "Little Modi, I'm angry," Marquis Lang said. Marchioness Modi narrowed her eyes. "Let's attack together and kill him. I was going to euthanize him with a drum, but now I'm angry. I'm going to tear you to pieces," Marquis Lang said. As he spoke, his voice turned from effeminate to more and more boorish. In the end, it became hoarse and violent like a savage beast. At the same time, Marquis Lang's slender and enchanting figure swelled in an instant. His clothes were torn apart, and he gradually transformed into a ferocious ape. Its aura was extremely terrifying, and its ferocious, sharp teeth gleamed coldly. A demon ape. This was a terrifying, chaotic saint-level demon beast. No one would have thought that the demon ape would be so effeminate when it was in human form, but when it turned around, it would become so fierce and violent. Marchioness Modi focused her eyes. Holding the blood-colored knife in her hand, she leaped up and landed on the demon ape's shoulder. The demon ape raised its two fists and pounded on its chest, producing a deafening sound. It sounded like the beating of a rattledrum. Thud, thud, thud. This time, it shattered the minds of many people. The demonic ape's body was extremely huge, towering like a mountain peak. Every single hair on its body was like a sharp spear. It was a true, peerless demon beast. A great demon that could roar through the universe. Roar. The demon ape roared. The shockwave blew everything away. Many buildings crumbled under this roar. Purple-haired Buffon hovered in midair. Holding the black turtle constellation walk and the Chilean transmigration ladle, he remained indifferent. However, the waves of air made Buffon's purple hair flutter in the wind. "It's an ape. Little host should like you very much." Purple-haired Buffon twitched the corner of his mouth and murmured to himself. Buzz suddenly, in his spirit sea, Bufong sensed Qilin's voice transmission. Little host, don't just watch. You should improve that chaos pot. That's your trump card to blow up the city. Qilin said. Bufong, who had his hands clasped behind his back, was taken aback. The chaos pot of creation? Bufong pondered for a moment. That thing was something he had suddenly come up with on a whim. At the very least, it was stronger than a simple perishing pot. However, there was a limit to its strength. It might be able to blow up an ordinary chaotic saint, but it might not be able to deal with a marquis or a duke. That's why I told you to improve it. I can still help you in District B, but when you get to District A, I'll be very busy. Qilin snorted. Busy with what? Bufong paused and asked doubtfully. Sleeping. After saying that, Qilin stopped talking. He cut off his connection with Bufong. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. In his opinion, Qilin was not afraid of the 3 dukes of District A. Perhaps he was afraid of the Queen of Curses, who was high and mighty but had never shown up. She was an absolute big shot. Bufong did not say anything for a moment. With a thought, he sank into the heaven and earth farmland. He went to study the chaos pot with Nyohan-san. With Qilin around, it should not be difficult for him to deal with the 2 marquises. That was indeed the case. The blood-colored knife light slashed down at high speed. The huge knife arc seemed to be about to cut half of the city into pieces. The giant ape's fist fell from the sky, heading straight for Bufong. Marquis Langu, who had transformed into a giant ape, did not have powerful magic power, but his strength was extremely terrifying. It was not difficult for him to smash it into pieces. Purple-haired Bufong was as ignorant as a mountain. He focused his eyes. He raised his hand, and the Qilin transmigration ladle swept out. The ladle smashed onto the saber light, and it actually shattered the saber light into pieces. The next moment, the giant ape's fist came whistling toward him. The power of that punch was wrapped in a power that made people's hearts tremble. Purple-haired Bufong focused his eyes. Then he raised his hand. Buzz, purple energy flowed and quickly gathered on his Taotai, arm rumble. A loud bestial roar rang out. The next moment, the head of a Qilin emerged on purple-haired Bufong's Taotai arm. The purple Qilin shadow, wrapped in a fist, smashed out. Without dodging, it collided with the giant ape's fist. This was a head-on clash, not the slightest bit of weakness. Everyone was stupefied. Why is this chef so outstanding? The 2 collided. A deafening sound shook heaven and earth. The petite fist collided with the mountain-like fist. The visual impact was great. In the eyes of others, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. However, the truth gave everyone a slap in the face. That was because Bufong had really blocked it. The giant ape's fist was blocked. He fought against 2 marquises alone, and he was not at a disadvantage. I can't believe the chef can do this. If he has such strength, why did he participate in the ranking battle? Why didn't he just fight all the way here? Many nobles' faces darkened. Did Bufong just want to cheat us of our bets? Some nobles who had lost all their belongings even cursed Bufong countless times in their hearts. If Bufong knew this, Bufong would definitely feel wronged. You lost the money with your strength. Why do you have to scold me? On the ground, Xiao Bai had completely absorbed the souls of the entire Blood Guards and dozens of saints of the Great Path. The souls of the entire Blood Guards and the origins of dozens of saints of the Great Path. Little Hu and Xiaopi landed on Xiao Bai's shoulders. Xiaopi lay on Xiao Bai's head like a golden crown. Shrimpy was lying on White Yi's head like a golden crown. In the distance, the 2 marquises, who were in a stalemate with purple-haired Bufong, narrowed their eyes. Marchioness Modi's heart was bleeding. That was her Blood Guards, the invincible army that swept across the starry sky. But more than half of them were destroyed here. It's all because of that puppet. Marchioness Modi's heart was burning with rage. Marquis Langu, you blocked that damn chef. I'll go kill this puppet and help you suppress this chef. Marchioness Modi said, her eyes flashing with killing intent. She wanted to destroy her Blood Guards, and she would make Xiao Bai spit out everything he had eaten. Roar. The giant ape roared as if in response to Marchioness Modi. Then, The giant ape pushed Marchioness Modi forward with its huge palm. The next moment, Marchioness Modi's speed exploded. She turned into a blood-colored beam of light and sped toward Xiaobai. Purple-haired Bufong glanced at her and twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. He didn't stop them and smiled playfully. Somehow, he was looking forward to how strong Xiaobai would be after he devoured the souls of all the blood guards. Marchioness Modi was too fast. She was incomparably valiant. Wielding the blood saber, she directly swept across. Wherever the saber light passed, the void collapsed inch by inch and was difficult to restore. She was filled with rage. With all the vengeance, he had to kill this iron puppet. Countless streams of chaotic energy spread out and fused into the saber. This was a saber strike that gathered all of the great accomplishment. The whistling sound caused many people's eardrums to burst. The ground of District B seemed to be unable to withstand the power of the saber light and began to crack continuously. Here it comes. One slash. He chopped down at Xiaobai's head. Xiaobai's chubby body sat cross-legged on the ground, as if he was digesting. Suddenly, its mechanical eyes suddenly turned and stared coldly and emotionlessly at Marchioness Modi, who was slashing down from the sky. He raised his fan-like palm. Boom! He grabbed the blood-red saber. The terrible saber energy kept slashing and cutting. Whitey's back was directly cut by the saber chi, leaving a huge and shocking ravine. However, Xiaobai did not move. He just held the blood-red saber. At this moment, the look in Marchioness Modi's eyes finally changed. Chapter 1733. That look. Marchioness Modi's heart skipped a beat. She was a chaotic saint, yet she was trembling under that look. The look in her eyes was completely different from the dull puppets. At that moment, it was as if she had seen death. Xiaobai's eyes were cold and merciless. At this moment, it was as if he was no longer an emotionless puppet, but a murderer filled with murderous intent. The sound of metal clanging rang out incessantly. Marchioness Modi's slash had fully displayed the strength of a chaotic saint. It was a display of all her strength. However, Xiaobai still managed to block the slash. Even though the energy of the knife kept bombarding Xiaobai's metal body and leaving numerous cuts on it, Marchioness Modi's body remained motionless. However, since she did not cut Xiaobai in half, it meant that Xiaobai's counterattack had begun. Buzz-bam! Little Hu, lying on Xiaobai's shoulder, wagged his nine tails. The heaven god's blood soaked his body. Little Hu opened his mouth and spat out a soul demon meatball at Marchioness Modi. Get lost! However, the soul demon meatball was caught by Marchioness Modi with one hand. No matter how hard the meatball spun, it could not break through. Little Hu stuck out his tongue, then wrapped his arms around Xiaobai's neck. Xiaobai's mechanical eyes turned. There was a loud bang. Then, he flung the blood-colored knife away from his hand. The saber slashed into the ground as if it was cutting through tofu, sinking into the ground. Marchioness Modi's heart skipped a beat. She spun her body and kicked toward Xiaobai like a windmill. However, Xiaobai did not move. With a slap, he sent Marchioness Modi flying away. With a thud, Marchioness Modi fell to the ground in the distance. Xiaobai slowly rose to his feet. The cuts on his body were slowly healing themselves. His white body reflected a cold, metallic luster. Marchioness Modi flipped over and got to her feet. She felt that this puppet was a little strange. After absorbing the soul energy of all her blood guards, could it be that the puppet had undergone a transformation? Marchioness Modi's heart thumped. Then, holding the long knife, the knife domain instantly enveloped Xiaobai, intending to cut him into two halves. Xiaobai's body kept rumbling. All kinds of metals were stacked on top of each other, as if they were combining and changing. Finally, his eyes turned purple. Purple-eyed Xiaobai reappeared. Of course, this kind of purple was different from the purple in the beginning. The great Tao purple chi might be able to describe Xiaobai's current purple. Xiaobai's aura kept rising. Its domain power grew stronger and stronger. Being enveloped by Xiao Bai's realm, Marchioness Modi felt that she could not exert her curse power. He could only use his physical strength. Xiao Bai twisted his neck. Then he lifted his chubby legs. There was a loud explosion. Xiao Bai disappeared on the spot, and when he reappeared, he was already beside Marchioness Modi. The evolution was complete. Xiao Bai's improvement was tremendous. Whether it was his origin, power, or domain, he had basically reached the level of a chaotic saint. He might not be as profound as Marchioness Modi, but the way he unleashed his power was enough to frighten her. She blocked with her knife. The huge fist hit her. Marchioness Modi was sent flying away. She could not use energy in her knife technique. She could only use pure knife energy. However, as a chaotic saint, even without magic power, her moves were still full of power. The man and the puppet fought back and forth. The ground rumbled, continuously collapsing. Many knife wounds appeared on Xiao Bai's body. However, Marchioness Modi was also coughing up blood. This evenly matched battle sent chills down the spines of the surrounding nobles. The clothes-stripping demon could actually fight against a marchioness? How could his improvement be so strange? In the distance, purple-haired Bufang's lips curved into an evil smile. This little lump did not disappoint him. Now he needed to deal with the huge demon ape in front of him. Purple-haired Bufang stomped his foot on the ground. His body turned into a beam of purple light and shot out. In the next moment, he hovered in front of the huge demon ape. The demon ape roared. It wanted to kill him as if he were swatting a fly. Bam! The huge palms clapped, producing a deafening sound. Heaven and earth seemed to shake at this moment. The demon ape grinned and seemed to be laughing excitedly. However, he quietly opened his palm, and a ladle suddenly flew out of his palm. The ladle kept growing bigger in the air. Soon, it knocked on the ape's head. Boom! This knock. He knocked the demonic ape so hard that it fell to the ground on its butt. Purple-haired Bufang's purple hair fluttered in the wind. He was holding the huge Qilin transmigration ladle with one hand, which was a shocking sight. With the Qilin transmigration ladle in hand, purple-haired Bufang naturally did not spare the ape. Spoonful after spoonful, he knocked the demonic ape's head until it lay on the ground. Its body couldn't help but tremble. The demon ape was furious. Every time it roared, every time it resisted, it was hit on the head. Everyone could see it. A huge bump bulged on the demon ape's forehead. It looked somewhat funny. However, no one was able to laugh. That was because the demon ape was Marquis Langu, a marquis. How could he be beaten like this? As the beating continued, the roaring demon ape also gradually shrank, and in the end, it turned into the sissy. Ouch! Marquis Langu covered his forehead with one hand, his eyes filled with grief. He glanced at Marchioness Modi, who was fighting Xiao Bai in the distance, then at purple-haired Bufang, who was about to hit him in the face with the ladle. He covered his mouth, whimpered, turned around, and fled. In a flash, he disappeared. Marquis Langu had fled. The nobles present were dumbstruck. As they watched Marquis Langu flee, their mouths opened so wide that one could stuff an egg inside. Did he just beat a marquis away? That was a marquis, one of the few supreme existences in Void City. He was the ruler of District B. But what happened? He was still beaten away. It was really terrifying. Many people's bodies and minds trembled. This chef had become more and more unfathomable. A chef was as powerful as an army. They might not have believed it before, but now they had to believe it. Purple-haired Bufang stretched his back and yawned. When he saw Marquis Langu flee, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He did not plan to kill the marquis. After all, they were in Void City, and killing a marquis would probably provoke that person's wrath. Purple-haired Bufang sat cross-legged in midair, watching the battle in the distance with great interest. The little lump had devoured so many souls, including the souls of many saints of the Great Path. Perhaps its fighting prowess had risen to a very terrifying level. I'm looking forward to it. The more Marchioness Modi fought, the more frightened she became. She felt that the puppet in front of her was becoming more and more human. It was as if it could see through her fighting techniques. She rolled over and landed on the ground, her face unsightly. Xiaobai was standing where he was. Steam kept rising from his body. The chubby puppet gave Marchioness Modi a lot of pressure. Could it be that she, a marquis of District B of Void City, could not even deal with a puppet? Marchioness Modi's eyes were red. This puppet had destroyed her army. How could she not avenge it? Kill him. Clutching the long knife, she charged out again. She could not use her magic power when she was within range of Xiaobai. Even with her strength, she could not resist this kind of restriction, which was similar to the law. So, she put some distance between herself and the puppet. She hovered in midair. Her magic power returned to her fleshly body, and chaotic energy swirled around her blood-colored knife. She swung the knife again and again, trying to kill the puppet with its energy. Xiaobai's mechanical eyes flashed. Little Hu and Xiaopi grabbed his body. The next moment, suddenly, energy burst out from under Xiaobai's feet. It looked like a flame, but it was the flame of the soul. Under the impact of the flame, Xiaobai soared into the sky and hovered in midair. Whitey raised its fan-like palm, and its palm began to change. Clanging sounds could be heard continuously as it formed a huge cylinder. In the middle of the cylinder was a pitch-black hole the size of a thumb. What is that? Everyone was dumbfounded. Marchioness Modi felt a chill when she was targeted by the black hole. Purple-haired Bufang's eyes lit up, and he looked forward to it. Buzz's energy began to gather. Suddenly, a beam of purple light converged in Xiaobai's cylinder. It shot out in an instant. The beam moved as fast as lightning, possessed extreme heat, and had the power to destroy and pierce. Marchioness Modi reacted quickly. The beam was closing in on her. She raised her knife in front of her chest. The beam hit the blood-colored knife. Boom, boom, boom. Sparks constantly shot out, causing the void to distort. The scorching heat caused the blood-red long saber to turn red in an instant. Marchioness Modi was shocked. The blood-colored knife in her hand was a divine artifact. Marchioness Modi's body was sent flying backward by the immense power of the purple rays. Then, she smashed hard into the wall. Slash! The ray pierced through Marchioness Modi's blade and her body as if it were made of tofu. Marchioness Modi's eyes went blank, and she coughed up a mouthful of blood. What kind of technique is that? Purple-haired Bufang smiled evilly. This scene caused everyone in District B to be so shocked that they fell silent. Under the continuous shooting of the beam of purple light, at last, the blood-colored knife cracked and crumbled, turning into tiny particles that drifted in the air. The beam of purple light disappeared. Marchioness Modi fell from the sky and landed on the ground. She stared blankly at her hands. There was a big hole in her chest, but there was no blood. It was as if her body had been broken down into tiny particles. What kind of technique is that? Marchioness Modi froze. In midair, Xiaobai raised his other hand. With a clanging sound, it turned into a black cylinder and aimed at Marchioness Modi. A cold and merciless mechanical voice rang through the air. Light of annihilation. As soon as the voice rang out, purple beams shot out from the black holes in both arms at the same time. Boom! The two beams shot toward Marchioness Modi. Marchioness Modi screamed. Chaotic energy surged around her, wrapping around her body, causing her to float up and down, her hair fluttering in the wind. Marchioness Modi summoned the chaotic energy and threw a punch. She didn't believe that the light of annihilation could compare to the chaotic chi. However, the moment the light of annihilation collided with the chaotic energy, everyone froze. Slash! The purple beam pierced through the chaotic energy and pierced through Marchioness Modi. Marchioness Modi's body collapsed in an instant. The primal chaos chi also directly dissipated, unable to resist at all. Marchioness Modi's eyes glazed over. After dispersing the chaotic energy, she staggered 2 steps back. She looked down at her body in disbelief. The gaping hole in her fleshly body continued to expand annihilating her fleshly body, causing her fleshly body to turn into granules and disappear. She was defeated. She was about to follow in the footsteps of the blood guards. An explosion rang out. All the nobles watched in disbelief. Marchioness Modi's body exploded. All that was left was her drifting soul. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. His abdomen spun and turned into a black hole. Buzz, a powerful suction erupted. All the nobles felt a chill run down their spines. Is this puppet really going to kill Marchioness Modi? Once her soul was devoured, it would be equivalent to the death of a marchioness. It would be a huge earthquake for the whole of Void City. Purple-Hair Bufong was just there to watch the show. However, as soon as Xiao Bai's black hole emerged, the corner of his mouth twitched. Purple-haired Bufong glanced in the direction of District A. He seemed to sense a terrible pressure rolling in the air. He looked at Xiao Bai, who had begun to absorb Marchioness Modi's soul. He cleared his throat. Then, he stood up and raised a hand. "Little lump of meat, have mercy." Chapter 1734. Spare my mouth? Why does that sound so strange? Many people had a strange look on their faces, but more than that, they were shocked. Purple-haired Bufong came to Xiao Bai's side, as if he had teleported. Xiao Bai rolled his mechanical eyes and gave Bufong a puzzled look. Xiao Bai could tell that the man in front of him was not Bufong. Since he was not Bufong, he would not necessarily listen to Bufong. Xiao Bai was so capricious. "Stop eating, or you'll be too full. You have just evolved. Aren't you afraid that you'll explode if you swallow another marquis?" Purple-haired Bufong seemed a little helpless. He rubbed his purple hair, glanced at Xiao Bai, and smiled evilly. "Besides, if you eat her, you will anger the Queen of Curses of Void City. Do you think little host can fight her with his strength?" said purple-haired Bufong. The Qilin felt that his analysis was almost perfect. Xiao Bai paused. His purple eyes flickered as if he was weighing the pros and cons. In the end, purple-haired Xiao Bai sighed, and the black hole in his round belly disappeared in an instant. Rumble, Marchioness Modi's soul, which was being pulled by a great suction, felt that it was free. She breathed a long sigh of relief. She glanced at Xiao Bai with lingering fear, then at purple-haired Bufong. She knew that this time, she should be able to survive. He must be afraid of the Queen of Curses. Marchioness Modi gave purple-haired Bufong a deep look, a complicated look in her eyes. In fact, she did not know whether the Queen of Curses would help her or not. However, this time, it could be said that he owed the chef a favor. She did not say anything. Marchioness Modi turned around, turned into a stream of light, and sped away. She left the place. Then, she slipped away. The nobles of District B didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Even two marquises couldn't stop this chef. What could they do? Were they also in despair? He could only watch as the chef crushed all his opponents and walked out of District B. Marquis Mansion. Marchioness Modi's mansion was extremely grand. After all, as the leader of the Blood Guards and the Marquis of Void City, she was different from the others. She had a great sense of vanity, and the reason she built her mansion so splendid was to satisfy her vanity. However, there was no one else in the enormous Marquis Mansion. Marchioness Modi's soul drifted back to her mansion. Marchioness Modi would need countless years to recover and reform her fleshly body. Her cultivation would also be stuck in this realm for a long time. To her, this was not good news. Void City was a very competitive place. Here, lagging behind meant getting beaten. If she didn't make any progress, she could easily become a chaotic saint like the person in charge of the fighting pit. This was something she didn't want to see. She sat cross-legged in the mansion. Slowly, she regained her strength. Of course, it was already a good ending for her that she didn't die. But the power of the curse spread out and started to wrap around her body, recovering her strength. Suddenly, Marchioness Modi slowly opened her eyes. There seemed to be a flash of doubt in her eyes. She gazed into the distance. Over there was the main gate of the Marquis Manor, an ice-cold gate that was incomparably deep and serene. Who goes there? Marchioness Modi shouted coldly, frowning. Although she was only left with her soul, her might was still there. Buzz, all of a sudden, a palm appeared on the door and grabbed it. The palm was covered with cold, black scales, which seemed to be wriggling. Marchioness Modi's heart jumped to her throat. Right now, she was at her weakest. She had never imagined that someone would be able to sneak into the Marquis mansion. Bam! The figure behind the door emerged. The next moment, he sped toward Marchioness Modi. It was as if he had seen the most delicious food. Marchioness Modi felt a chill run down her spine. In her soul form, she leaped into the air. The cursed power spread and turned into a black, cursed snake that lashed at the figure. Bam! The cursed power slammed into the figure. Countless black scales splashed out and blood flowed. The figure resisted her cursed power and charged at her with all his might. Although she was weak now, her cursed power could easily kill a saint of the Great Path. Who was this person? The next moment, a crocodile's head appeared in front of her. Ezra, how dare you? Marchioness Modi flew into a rage when she saw the person in front of her. In her soul state, she let out an explosive roar. The cursed power surged again and slammed into Ezra, causing him to bleed as if he had just been fished out of a pool of blood. However, the craziness in Ezra's eyes did not fade away. He moved over 1,000 steps with one step. The black devil claw fell and grabbed Marchioness Modi's soul form. Sizzle, sizzle. Marchioness Modi howled miserably. She felt as if her soul was about to be evaporated. It was an indescribable feeling. You're a soul demon. Marchioness Modi seemed to think of something. She opened her eyes with difficulty and roared. Buzz the crocodile head, Ezra, opened his mouth and was about to bite Marchioness Modi. Then he tore her apart bit by bit. Buzz, the evil arm, began to wriggle. Covered in blood, Ezra fell to the ground. You're indeed a Marchioness of Void City. Even though you're only a weak soul, you almost killed this body. Ezra focused his eyes, and a cold look came over his face. If Bufong were here at this moment, he would be very familiar with the look in his eyes. It was the look in Heaven God Transmigration's eyes. What was hiding in the evil beast was Heaven God Transmigration's soul. After devouring the soul of a Marchioness, Ezra felt as if his strength was about to sublimate. His arm kept wriggling, and the old scales on it faded away and were replaced by new ones. He knew very well how powerful this arm was, and he was looking forward to it. Soon, I'll be able to slap that stinky chef to death with my own hands. Ezra stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Then, his body slowly disappeared. In the heaven and earth farmland, a rumbling sound rang out. The whole farmland shook violently. Huge waves rose from the river of life. Bufong cleared his throat and waved his hand. He could not help but feel a little embarrassed that the pot had exploded once again. Standing in front of the wooden hut, Neo Hansan stroked his beard and fell into silence. Too many powerful energies are mixed together, and the fortune flatbread is full of surprises, making this so-called chaos pot too difficult to control, Neo Hansan said. But there should be a medium that can control these violent energies. Looking at Neo Hansan, Bufong frowned. He had tried many times. Perishing pot, death sword pot, fortune flatbread, sold demon meatballs, explosive meatballs, and many other ingredients. Even with all kinds of gourmet arrays attached to it, the pot still exploded. However, he was glad that the power of the chaos pot formed when all these ingredients were mixed together was very terrifying. If the farmland wasn't Bufong's space, it would have been reduced to ruins long ago. Neo Hansan thought for a long time. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Owner Boo, add the divine sealed dumplings into the pot, and distribute the energy according to 1:9 ratio. Also, add the chaotic energy. Neo Hansan seemed a little excited as he said to Bufong. Bufong paused. Bufong nodded. According to Neo Hansen's instructions, he mixed the ingredients again. He added the divine sealed dumplings and chaotic energy. Then he roasted them with the divine flame and controlled the gentle fusion of the energy. Rumble, Bu Fong's pupils constricted slightly. He stared at the huge golden bun in his hand. A peculiar fragrance was emitted from this bun-shaped energy aggregate. It seems to have stabilized a lot. Bu Fong was slightly taken aback. It seems to work. If I'm not mistaken, this chaos pot of creation should work. Nio Han-san heaved a sigh of relief. Obviously, he was also a little uncertain. Bu Fong looked at the golden chaos pot. Although it flowed peacefully, the energy contained in it was extremely terrifying. The things gathered in this pot were enough to destroy half the universe. Whether it was the perishing pot or the death sword pot, with Bu Fong's current strength, the power of each dish cooked by him was no weaker than the attack of a saint of the Great Path. Moreover, it was a unified combination of so many dishes. If it weren't for the gourmet array and the chaotic energy, it wouldn't have worked. Even so, Bu Fong was bombarded by the wok many times before he succeeded. If it weren't for the fact that Bu Fong's strength had become much stronger, perhaps he's going to be the only host who dedicates his life to the science of food. Bu Fong loved the golden chaos pot so much that he couldn't bear to part with it. From today on, this chaos pot would be Bu Fong's strongest trump card. He put away the chaos pot and encouraged Nio Han-san. He was indeed the father of hybridization. He had done a lot of research on this kind of thing. Then, he put away the chaos pot with satisfaction. In the heaven and earth farmland, he cooked a delicious meal and treated everyone to a hearty meal. After that, Bu Fong left the farmland. The battle outside had long since ended. When Bu Fong returned to his fleshly body, Qilin had already returned to his spirit sea and was sleeping soundly. Bu Fong lay on Xiaopi's back and was dragged away by Xiaopi. Bu Fong woke up. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes turned and glanced at Bu Fong. Foxy, on the other hand, jumped onto Bu Fong's shoulder and kept barking as if she was asking for credit. Bu Fong rubbed the latter's little head. He looked at Xiao Bai in confusion. Xiao Bai, how did your eyes turn purple? Because he was immersed in the heaven and earth farmland, Bu Fong didn't know much about Xiao Bai's changes. Xiao Bai raised his fan-like palm and scratched his round head. He didn't say anything. Bu Fong didn't ask anything. The nobles around him had disappeared. The two marquises who were fighting had also disappeared in front of him. The end of District B had appeared. In front of the end was a huge city wall. This city wall was so high that one couldn't see its end at a glance. Fortunately, under the city wall there was a small door. Of course, this small door was relative to the entire city wall. For Bu Fong, this small door was already very big. Bu Fong, Xiao Bai, and Little Hu came to the door. They raised a hand, pressed it against the door, and pushed hard. With a creak, the door was pushed open. A dazzling light burst out from behind the door. Behind the door was District A. It was also the most central area of Void City, where the cursed goddesses lived. Bu Fong finally stepped into this district. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.